Evening. Beautiful evening out there. Call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Bennington Battle Day, that's right. State holiday for some who can't do certain work, I guess, on this day. There's contracts that you're not allowed to work on Bennington Battle Day. I think everybody else worked. Additions and deletions or changes to the agenda?
None for me.
None? We do have consider a motion to go into executive session as the last item. If in fact we do that, we would close the broadcast. And again, if any actions are taken, we would come out of executive session, take those actions, and they would be reflected in the minutes. So our first item, and I think the entire select board and town administrators honored to recognize Marie Gardner for many years of service to the town of Hinesburg. She is retiring, and I'll ask Renee to give us the blow-by-blow historical facts of Marie's dedication and hard work for the town.
All right, I don't know if I can offer quite the blow-by-blow, but I can give you a sort of a, yes, I think back in 1991, you were, became a lister, or an elected position. Prior to that, though, you were a justice of the peace, serving on the VCA. And do you know how many years prior to?
You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I for sure was around 85 or 6.
Yeah.
But
And then in 2008, in the fall of 2008, you became the lister's assistant, so an appointed position. And you've been serving in that role until just recently that you've retired and became an assessor.
yes, became an
Assessor, yeah. So a long time of service to our town, and
Through at least 2 reappraisals?
I think I've been here through 3 reappraisals.
3 reappraisals.
Yeah.
The last
I came
one.
in, the first one was way back in the early 90s. And then we did what they call a paper one, where we didn't actually go out and visit properties in the late 90s. And then we had one in 2006. And the one we just did.
just recently, yeah.
Which
So no more appraisals? Is that what you're saying?
No, I can't say that. Hopefully not for a while.
Sure.
But it
And,
depends.
and I think as far as I can remember, you know, we've been in good standing with the state as far as our appraisals go when it comes to determining school taxes and whatnot. We're, you know, in a good place. And I'd like to also acknowledge that you've been thinking about retiring for a while, and you really waited and helped the town go through this transition in a painless way, and really left us in really good shape.
I hope
So
so.
we really appreciate that.
Thank you. I actually, back when Holly was going to retire, I was wanting to get done then, honestly, 10 years ago. And then I thought, oh my Lord, we shouldn't both leave at the same time. So I said, I'll just do it for a couple years. And it was 10. But that was because the economy changed and we didn't need a reappraisal. And I really wanted to stay through another reappraisal. So.
Another example of a lot of historical knowledge leaving this building.
Cheryl's the oldest one now, I told her today. Because we're almost exactly the same
I'm
age.
sure she appreciated it.
Yes, we really appreciate it, passing.
Well,
I'd like to also say that not only have we been in good standing with the state, but I think a testament to the effectiveness and thoroughness that Marie has paid is that we have very few complaints, what do you call it? Appeals, yeah.
Right.
And that she has always been able to document and the rationale for those assessments, and to, I think, address a lot of them before they ever get to the appeal period because of the good record keeping that's been done.
Thank you. It's very important.
Yeah.
And I think that will continue. feel confident that will continue, so.
Well, I think as the chair, I get to shake your hands.
There we go.
And so, a card
Oh,
and something
thank
in
you
there,
so
and I'll shake your
much.
hand
Thank
officially.
you.
And then apparently you have a new activity at your house.
Yes, a new
so-
pool, which
yeah.
I'm very much enjoying, and this will be perfect. My
There you
grandson
go.
will love it. Very sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm still around, so, you know, I'm not going too far.
Gotta watch how you say that, though.
Yes, I know, I gotta call at 7 o'clock Sunday night.
Right.
So now that you've retired, the timer's on for Lynn. Like, was it
Oh.
15 or 20 years that it's ready to go?
He's still hanging around.
I think the quote is a
No,
couple
he
more
says he's
years.
never retiring.
Yeah.
A couple more years.
That's what he tells me, so.
But Marie's service to the town hasn't ended. She's still on our planning commission,
Yeah.
so.
Right. That's
That
true. Good
continues.
point.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm still on the VCA as of
Yeah.
now, so that's what I meant by I'm still around.
Right.
And, so I'll enjoy everybody's company still.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Yes.
Can we take a picture?
Oh, you should. You should.
Should I shake
Just,
her hand?
and with, yeah, why don't you
Okay.
redo your little handshake thing?
Here, do you have a phone?
Yeah, you can do it if you want to do it. That's great.
Trying to follow the thunder while you're doing the photo. The last year before Maria, it's been a year since she's had her hip replaced. And the year before the hip, after we returned from Costa Rica, and her hip was really bad, she'd say, "Oh, Lynn, I don't know if I can get up those stairs again." And she said, "Oh, when we're having reappraisal, I went up and down those stairs 10 times today. I can't hardly walk home." And I said, "No, just, keep going one more day and you'll get done." Then she got a cane and it was a little bit better. And then the cane didn't work as well. And finally she had the surgery and she was in the hospital one day. She came home and walked upstairs without a cane.
Wow.
But Michael wrote on my card today that we'll always have the stairs, because I did fall down some of those stairs one night when you were having a meeting upstairs. You didn't hear me, thank heavens, because I was so embarrassed. And I was fine.
Right.
But, yeah, he and I, we're joking.
Mike Anthony just happened to be walking up the stairs when all of a sudden he heard this loud crash and came around the corner and
And
saw
there was
someone.
Marie, and I had this heavy winter coat on with my hood, so he didn't know who it was. And I was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was so embarrassed, I just couldn't get up quick enough. He says, "I never saw anybody get up, so thank heavens I didn't get hurt."
Yes. So
Anyway,
there we go.
yes.
All right.
All
So,
right.
shall we shake hands?
Yeah, thank you very
You're
much.
It's my pleasure.
Let's see the duck.
Oh, the
Okay,
duck.
gotta show the duck.
I can't shake hands and show the duck too.
Yeah, you can.
All right.
It looks like one of the
Thank you,
racing
Andrea.
guys
Thank you.
at 4th of
Thank you for
July.
that.
Just got them all out. Does it have a number on the bottom?
Oh, it has a C.
There you go.
Carol will love it.
All right.
I've been
Well,
here
that was
3
fun.
nights in a row.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, number 4 on the agenda, a discussion with Champlain Valley District and Chief Koss and our police department concerning the school resource officer. So maybe you guys can come up. I think you.
Guest of honors.
Yes,
All right, good.
Yep.
Mr. Bunting.
Here you
Bring
go.
one, please.
Because we can help you. Oh, boy.
Uh-oh, do you need that cane?
All right.
So Adam Bunting and Chief Koss. I think you came here maybe 3 or 4 months ago and talked about the fact that the school board for the district was considering SRO's resource officer, school resource officer, and you gave us a good explanation of why you thought it would be appropriate. The officer would not just be at CVU, but would service the entire district, but primarily at CVU.
Probably 85 to 90% at CVU, depending on the model. They would do some education in some of the sending schools, but
Okay. So maybe you could fill us in on what's happened since the last time you were here, I think.
Sure. So we went back, after speaking with you, we went back to our school board, and they have charged us with coming up with an official proposal and making contact with all of the towns. And I think that one of the senses that we got last time we were here was we're a district, supervisory district, and it makes sense to talk to Williston and Shelburne. And we did some exploration also with the Chittenden County Sheriff's Department, and talked some more with Hinesburg, and came up with basically a firmer proposal where to bring to our board early in the year, and we'd be looking at sharing the cost of a school resource officer with 75% of the funds coming from the school and the CVSD budget, and 25% coming from one of the towns. We met with
And that 75-25% is based on
a yearly,
full year,
right.
so approximately 75% of a 2,080 hour year would be dedicated toward the district school in whatever duties those are.
We'd be contracting for 190 days, I think is the number that we came up with whichever department it made the most sense. So did lots of learning, and learned quite a bit about the state of police forces in Vermont and how difficult it is to get people these days. And so it's been a bit of a journey, but with all of the departments and the towns we've spoken with, it sounds like there's a will and an interest, and people think it makes a lot of sense, particularly with the idea that the school resource officer, we talked about this last time, does a lot more than just sort of policing, but is a real community support for students. So I'm not sure. I don't think did Jean's proposal did
They
make
have
it?
it.
We have it,
great.
yeah.
So you've got it in front of you.
It's a one-page proposal dated 8/16 for our meeting, and it's the basically officer proposal.
And in the words of Val Gardner, I never want to predict board behavior, but it seems like our board's pretty motivated at this point to make something happen relatively quickly. So we're back to have another discussion with you.
And so based on the proposal, I think the chief also put together a rough spreadsheet, I think, of sort of what the costs would be roughly to hire an additional officer, right? And then what that salary would be for 75% and what the delta would be, I think, for the town if we move forward exactly the way it's proposed.
$25 is not necessarily the amount. I use that as the base to get all the other numbers. So it's possible that a new employee would not be making $25 an hour.
I also do want to be really clear, and I think I stated this last time, but we've had just a phenomenal relationship with the Hinesburg Police Department, and they've given us incredible service. I think the right word in this situation, and so just want to put that appreciation out while we're here. Very much value them.
So I'll open it up for any questions or discussion. I mean, I'm happy to go too, but go ahead.
Okay. I have some reservations about this, primarily that it's not in our budget. And I don't really feel that it's appropriate for us to move ahead without there being an opportunity for voters to weigh in this. I think it's a major increase in our staff of our police department. And I think that same thing for whether it's coming out of the town budget or the district budget. I think it's not something that should move ahead without full disclosure and understanding of its impacts on our budgets for both, for the town for sure. I appreciate that Frank has done an analysis of what it costs for an officer, but I do think that there's other administrative and overhead costs associated with having another person on our force. You know, you did disclose that it doesn't cover vehicles or uniforms, but I think it also means there's additional administrative time that's spent doing that. So I think that the implication that it might be only
24
or $25,000 for the town, I don't think that's realistic. Or, you know, I feel like it would be more appropriate to take the total budget of the town and maybe similarly to how we do a contract with the town of St. George or some other way. But anyway, my primary issue is that we don't have $25,000 in our budget for this, and I'm not willing to move ahead. I don't see the urgency of needing to have this before we can have a full discussion with voters on that. The second reason that I am not convinced that it needs to be a Hinesburg officer is that the duties that are described in this proposal don't necessarily relate to it needing to be Hinesburg. I think, you know, we've had a really good relationship with CVU. I think if it's, you know, from the conversation that I heard that happened in the spring with the board, it sounded like there was an interest in having a presence of an officer in the other schools as well. You know, and when that leads me to my third point, which is that I see this as a real opportunity for the three departments, Williston, Shelburne, and Hinesburg, to really develop a more collaborative approach to public safety in all the towns. And that, especially if we're dealing with youth who are in rec programs in all the towns, or, you know, kids go back and forth, that you know, to address public safety in all of our communities. I know that there's mutual aid, or I'm not sure what you call it in the police department, where they call for backup. But I think this is an opportunity to really further that. I also feel like it's a response to the situation that was happening this spring nationally and in Vermont, and that you know, I personally am not convinced that there's evidence that having a school resource officer would help in those situations. I do strongly believe that we need stronger support in our schools for mental and emotional and social well-being of our students, and to track that. And I'm not convinced that a police officer is the type of services that are needed to address those needs of students. I think there's probably a role for police departments to visit and be at CVU, but I'm not sure that the response that we're taking at this time is, you know, it's somewhat. I'm sure that the school has probably discussed this in the past, and it rose to the top front burner instead of the back burner because of what happened. But I do feel like there may be other ways of addressing that. And I did see that there's a fair amount of money that the state has made available to the towns or to the schools, and that our sending schools are receiving quite a bit of money, and wondered what that money is going to be used for in those schools. So at this time, I guess I would not support the officer being a hire of the Hinesburg Police Department.
Can I offer one point as far as the budget? If you think about for the municipal budget, the Hinesburg portion, or whatever town is going to take on this, it wouldn't come into play until almost the next fiscal year, because the school year goes to mid-June or so, and it sounds like you may be building in a few extra days beyond that. So we'd be getting closer to FY '20, and so we'd have this budget year to be planning for that, and then the voters would be voting on that budget at town meeting. So just food for thought.
Okay, well, my understanding was that they wanted to have this officer in place for the beginning of the school year.
Right, so our commitment would still need to be there. Our funds wouldn't be utilized for it until,
Right, but we would have made the commitment, yeah.
right.
But that's a good question, just to clarify. You're expecting the school board to take this up potentially and vote when, in the next couple,
September 18th.
September 18th. And then, assuming that they approve it, we don't know what's gonna happen, but then the expectation would be how fast would you expect this to actually happen?
How fast would we expect to get a person in place? I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend on hiring, finding the right person.
Right.
But we'd be moving quickly.
Okay. And I take it for the school budget, the $70,000 is, it hasn't been approved by the voters either, but it considered sort of chafe in that budget.
I mean, I don't think anything of that,
Yeah.
that size is considered chafe. I mean, I think
But they
we'd
would
be-
move ahead without,
Yeah,
their plan would be to move ahead, that they'd be able to absorb that.
if the board felt strongly
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So Phil, I think we'll
Go ahead.
go around the horn.
Sure, yeah.
So I'll throw my thoughts out there, and I both agree and disagree with Andrea. I'm not wholeheartedly sold that Hinesburg's department should shoulder the 25%. I'm 100% certain that I could support an officer at CVU and all the schools. I think it's important. I don't think it's all about students being a danger. I think it's outside people as well. And so it's hard to track them, much harder than it is to track the students. I guess what I would like to see is maybe more of a collaboration between the departments, and maybe instead of hiring a new officer, maybe it's an officer from Hinesburg 1 week or 1 month, an officer from Williston and Shelburne and split the time so that we don't need to hire another officer, because I don't think the people of Hinesburg, who we represent, could support it at this time. As much as they would like to see an officer, I think there's a way to do it in a more economically feasible manner. But I have kids at CVU, I have kids at Hinesburg, and I think it's important. Really, I know other schools have done it, and it only takes one time that officer is there to shut something down, and it's a nice safety valve. At least it's a deterrent, if nothing else. So I support it. It's just the financing that's making me a little bit leery of this particular proposal.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't recognize is the importance of that officer serving on our student resource teams. So well before there's a problem, and I think you're just never aware of what's prevented,
Right.
Which I think is a challenge sometimes. But whether it's from, we're surveying. It's pretty interesting. We're surveying every student right now. We're doing what's called an engagement survey, and we're surveying every student's parent. We're surveying, having the kid pick a friend, surveying them, and surveying the kid's advisor, and we're sitting down and getting this wealth of data where we're looking at students who are, I think, being pretty forthright and saying things like, you know what, I don't feel like I have a friend right now, And so we've got this amazing amount of data, and to sit and talk, but I think a little bit what we're missing is that the eyes that we don't have as educators sometimes, and to have the connection with the outside agencies on our school teams is just really appealing to us. I mean, clearly in any type of a crisis situation, that's a no-brainer, and the God forbid moments, but there's so much more that we've learned that an officer could help us with. So it's stuff that you don't anticipate sometimes.
I'm sorry, just real quick. Andrea, I don't think we're sitting here necessarily because of Fairhaven. I think we're sitting here because Adam is the principal of CVU. For years and years and years, we worked at trying to get things done up there. Cameras were, oh my God, you can't have cameras. You can't have locked doors and all of this stuff, and I think that we're talking about an SRO because of who the principal is, who embraces that kind of thing. I would like to think that we'd be sitting here regardless of Fairhaven, and yeah, maybe it did push it a year, but having the largest high school in the state without an SRO, to me, is just ridiculous. But nonetheless, that's the way we do it. That's, school district is, I don't run it. So, Tom, the other thing is I can't send an officer to CVU for a month. Because right now, there's just 2 of us on day shift. I'm working shifts by myself. The other officers working shifts too. I just can't disappear somebody for a month. So that part of it I don't think is feasible. The other thing that I'm sure Adam would say is the whole idea of having a school resource officer that is permanently assigned there is the credibility with the kids, the getting to know them and all of that stuff. Because just sending an officer up there, it's more than that. It's actually working with the students and the guidance and all of that. So from that end of it, regardless of what we do, I really think it's got to be a department that does that.
Yes, and Frank, you said the point that I was going to emphasize, which is I think I was very convinced by your talking about the SRO at that meeting that we went to a month or so ago up at CVU, and the idea of relationship. I've been a high school teacher, and I can imagine how having a police officer that's there all the time, the kids get comfortable with that person, and maybe some kid who's feeling a little shaky, he might feel comfortable just having a chat with that guy. Or that policeman might know the kids well enough that he would actually approach a kid and say, how's it going? And so I think it's a great idea. I'm very much in favor of the resource officer. And I'm glad that you're pushing it. But I do have real questions about the financing, and I wish that somebody could come up with a really creative solution. I even have questions. The Hinesburg Police Department is doing a great job taking care of CVU now, and is that kind of an unfair burden that Hinesburg carries because CVU happens to be in our town? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that every town meeting I've been in, there have been questions about the police budget. There have been challenges about, do we need this many policemen? Maybe we could do with less policemen. It's always been a discussion. And like others have said, I can't imagine that the town would support us having a police officer for the summer. A town like Shelburne, maybe they need it. They have a lot of tourists that come through Shelburne. Maybe they feel like they could use another officer. But it makes sense, really logically, that police officer at CVU would come from the Hinesburg Police Department. That's why it's kind of a puzzle that I can't figure out the answer to.
So the answer is this, right? So conceptually, this is fine. I don't have a problem with this. This makes sense that you have an officer up there for all the reasons you've said, and perhaps 1,000 more I don't even know. I followed this conversation to some extent and asked myself a couple of questions. Why now? Why the urgency all of a sudden? You've sort of answered that, but it still lingers. Why now? Why do we need to have it tonight? Why are we having this conversation tonight about having this board meeting vote on the 18th so it can start as soon as possible? Maybe that is just, but I don't even want to guess, but I'm sure there are reasons. The answer is this. If CVU wants to have an SRO up there and is willing to pay for it, there's the answer. So in as much as what Marilee just said is Hinesburg maybe doesn't have a use for a part-time summer officer, CVU certainly has a use for a full-time, all the rest of the year officer. And maybe there is an option there, or maybe there is an opportunity there for CVU or the district as a whole to find use for that officer's time for the other X amount of days we're talking about. I don't know, we're not talking about that many, right? 100 days, 90 days, something like that.
Yeah, what's the typical contract? It's...
And there's the answer right there.
So CVSD covers the full expense of the officer
No.
and embed that person with.
The citizens of Hinesburg, Shelburne, Williston, St.
Right,
George
yeah.
cover. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we've taken out this conversation about whether or not Hinesburg's municipal budget can afford a $25,000 officer, part-time officer during the summer.
Okay, one thing I'd like to do is clarify something I said back. Before I come to this board and ever ask you for anything, I
Yes.
really, really have to have it. It's not a, geez, I'd really like to have it or whatever. When I talk about my personnel strength, we're doing okay. The fact that the chief of police right now has about 10 cases that I'm working on, whereas in the old days, couple years ago, my cases were the easy ones because I took it, I worked on Sundays and stuff like that. The whole complexities of this department has changed because of the complexities of the cases we're working. So would I come to you guys and say, Jesus, I'd really, really like to have another officer? Probably not. But would an officer that's sitting there for 25% of the time just be sitting there going, God, I wish there was something to do? Not even a chance.
I agree with you. But my point, though, and maybe this is the point you're making, is that if you had an officer, you're telling me you're not requesting an officer, like independent of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You're not requesting an
come to
officer
you and said,
for
yes, I
a 25% officer.
Right.
You don't need it, right? So working on that premise there, yes, I understand that you would probably find use for that officer.
Right.
Why wouldn't you, right? That's the nature of your department. You work, and there's plenty of it, but you don't need it. But here's a need that is, and so perhaps this gets off the ground in this way. And then as this need grows and you come to us and you say, oh, I need another officer. Well, hey, how about maybe we could work something. This is what Andrea and both of you actually have said, of like finding, instead of the easy answer, you take 3/4 and we'll take 1/4. This might be an option. I don't know if it is or not. Let's explore it. But it's something I'm certainly struck with here, and that would certainly remove sort of the conversation. I haven't heard what you're going to say, but you're probably going to say something about the finances, is my guess. And that would certainly remove that. And that's the comment that we're, I guess, collectively making to you, is we're just not there yet. Yeah.
Okay. And I appreciate you coming in. And I like the concept. I think the last time you were here, I changed my mind. When the first topic came up, I was like, it felt like we were being reactionary. And maybe some of it is a little bit of that, but I think it was articulated very well, the value of having community in the school and having an officer, which is part of our community, there represented makes really good sense. And, I also look at, $25,000 in the town's budget isn't going to break our back, for sure. But like Mary Lee said, we have, and the police budgets have been basically supported very well. And so I think there's a lot of respect for the majority of the tax voters, and they are happy with their police. But we've, as a town, have presented it that we bought a new building, we don't need it, it's not going to grow, that's all we need. Here's the size of our officer, here's the size of our force, this is what we need, it's not going to grow. We absorbed a couple additional officers that happened through grants over time, and so now we're at a level, and it was said at town meeting, we're good for now. So for us, I think, to go and change that would not, I think, be fair to the voters. That doesn't mean we couldn't go through a process if we wanted and get input from voters, but it's not something I think the select board, at least I'm not hearing, is ready to say, go forward without that kind of feedback, because it's more than just $25,000. It's the addition of a whole new officer, and it's enlarging our department. I think it makes total sense. You know, you could argue that it should be a Hinesburg officer, and so I'm not against all that, but I am reluctant to speak for the voters, and I'd rather have them, you know, make that decision. And maybe they would. Maybe they would say, yes, it's worth it. And Frank and his team could articulate, you know, here are the additional values we get with the other 25%. I do look at, when I look at the cost of one, this is just a salary, but if I look at the entire police budget of $560,000, and then the debt we cover for vehicles, I assume the officer would take a police car there.
Well, we've got a little presentation on that subject.
So they would have a vehicle anyways that we would provide, so that when they go to other places, they would use that.
Okay. What I'm going to have is Caleb come up and talk about the dynamics of a vehicle.
Okay, so I'll take that out of there. So there is the, you know, the budget, the overall budget. What's the full-time equivalent that you have at the?
Six.
And does that doesn't include the admin?
No, that's
So-
5 full-time and then one
One
then you give me
floating.
40 hours
Yeah.
part-time.
Yeah. So roughly, based on that, and if I add the insurance and retirement, it's about $120,000 a year per officer for the, you know, the overhead, roughly. And so again, I'm not sure. The voters, you know, the people like the school. They could, you know, easily be persuaded, I think, if you know, for the reasons. But I would be reluctant to hire a new officer without some good input from the town. And even if we wanted to move forward, it wouldn't be a decision today anyways. It would take a while. So I think we could decide, you know, what some next steps might be. But then, you know, maybe based on what you're hearing, you've got your next steps anyways, which would be approaching the other towns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak
Right.
where
you
without
are, yeah.
for the towns. I also don't want to speak for Elaine and Jean at central office. But in our discussions with both Shelburne and Williston, it seemed pretty feasible that they'd be able to move forward quickly. So our next step would probably be to go there.
And although it sounds like your, I'll say first choice, or maybe your preference would be to continue to work with Hinesburg.
Yeah, everyone
yeah.
we've spoken to has said,
Yeah.
from Chittenden County to Shelburne and Williston, said, listen, the Hinesburg option makes the most sense. We could probably make it work.
Yeah.
But you know, they're partners of theirs as well, and they also see, wow, you know, right in the town, it makes sense. So.
And you've implied that you've already worked with the town of Hinesburg, and it works very well, and that's good to hear, and I don't doubt that based on, you know, the officers we have. But in the meantime, your first priority would be to move forward with this, and that would be to contact the other two police departments.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the school board
Yep.
and their process, but I think we've also had the realization of, wow, if we can make this happen, and you know, I don't even feel comfortable saying it publicly, really, but we are the only school in this area without a school resource officer. You know, our job is to make sure that our kids are getting the best. You know, safety is the first thing that we do. So that's, you know, there's a lot that we can't foresee right now, but we're going to be aggressive.
Okay.
So Phil, I have a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
Regarding the other two departments, if they were to move forward and supply an officer, would they be pulling one from their own department, or would they be hiring another? Because if they were to hire another, it seems to me like sharing that 25,000 would be the way to go to begin with.
Right.
I mean, if they're pulling one from their department and they have, you know, extra hours.
I don't think either one of them can do that,
Yeah.
afford to do that.
Then why are we?
I
Then
think-
this discussion seems kind of.
I think there are actually, you know, and again, I don't want to speak for the departments, but my understanding is there are actually unfilled spots, and that they would actually be attracting people because of the even things like the school schedule, the connection with you're going to attract a certain type of person who wants to be a school resource officer, as opposed to.
And that's how we would have hired, same thing.
And who would do the hiring?
Be joint. It would be through the department, but the school, as a representative of the school, would have a say in who was there. I think that's real. I mean, to be really frank, I don't want the. No, sorry.
Don't be that frank.
Right. The wrong person would be really the wrong move. So.
I imagine there's models already out there on how, I'm guessing, South Burlington High School and South Burlington Police, they have an officer who does that kind of almost full time, and so they find a way to manage that between the two of them, I would guess.
You have some impressive researchers over here who have.
But I've also heard, like in Essex, they have it's private securities. So I also wonder whether there's a temporary situation if it's safety primarily, that until it could become part of both of our budgets, and we work that out, so that we can go to the voters in March, having really expressed and full-blown understanding of how it's going to work and who's paying for what and what the real costs are, because I don't think it is just the salary portion of it. So
question about the relationship and why Hinesburg is your first preference, and that is because, is it strictly a location thing, or is it because our department somehow serves you in a way that other departments don't?
That's a tough question.
Like
You don't have to drive through Shelburne on your way home tonight, do you?
We keep saying it's obvious that Hinesburg is our first choice,
Right.
but I don't understand why it's obvious. I'm assuming why it's obvious, but I don't know. Is that something you can articulate?
Yeah, I mean, Chief can probably speak to it better than I can.
The reason why it works better is your entire backup, your entire department is right here. So if something happens up there, you're getting your partners, your people that you work with up there to go ahead and solve it. If Shelburne puts an officer up there, well, of course, we're going to go up there
That's what I'm
on an
thinking.
emergency or something. It's just not quite as cohesive as it would be. And to be honest with you, the kids, I don't know, they're driving through Hinesburg primarily get to CVU.
Sure.
That's part of the relationship, is if you've got an SRO who's a Hinesburg officer, it's easier to work with these kids driving through our town, as opposed to, and I'm not going to say it doesn't work, I mean, to have a Shelburne or Williston. But the thing is it's just, to me, it's more cohesive having a Hinesburg officer, because like I said, that plus you've got the entire department backing you up. Or
How would you answer that question?
All of those things, but I would also say that they're the department that responds to us. So they're the one, when we have something happen at school or where we need support or we need to report something, it's 482-3397. It's they're the folks we've built relationships with over the years that have gone through the tragedies together and also the joys at times. And
Glad to hear you use that number. It saves the dispatch charge.
yeah.
$33.
Hey, Frank, did you want to, does Caleb want to come up and explain
Well,
the idea on the
we need to
vehicle?
talk about the car.
Yeah, we could do that.
And they also sit on our school safety team, which is an important,
Yes.
another important asset. So. And they know their town.
So we can't give up one of our 4 cars for this. We would have to get an additional car. With on-call and our current staffing, there are times that Chief and I are going to places and calls in our own vehicles. Mm-hmm. It just happens.
I've seen you.
Yeah, we have. And I started this morning, so It's rough numbers. Basically, to put a full regular cruiser in the rotation, you're looking at an additional $7.56 to that hourly rate that we gave them before. Another option is just finding a economical lease for 2 years. I did quick research. That would be ballpark around $4.30 addition. Get that 2 years out of the way. That puts us at the end of the rotation for our current 2 cars that are about ready to leave.
Yep.
You would then rotate one of those cars that we already own out into an SRO position where it doesn't get used as much and doesn't get as many miles, and rotate a new vehicle into the fleet as a patrol vehicle. And then every time you'd have a rotation out, you'd take whichever car is in the best condition and you just get rid of that SRO vehicle and rotate that into that position. So those are the 2 options that I came up with this afternoon.
Does that car need to be housed? I know you only have the 4 bays.
Yeah, you would have to come up with either the SRO would take it home and it would stay there, or we'd find some other situation for it. But
So a new one is around $14,000 a year. You said $7.
That's
roughly.
so that's
And
it's
the other one-
11.5 is
11,500.
yeah, and that I factored in fuel,
Okay.
maintenance, and all of that.
Insurance.
So, and
For how long?
you know,
At 11,500.
that was a 6-year, and the only reason I did the 6-year was because that was our current rotation, and I used, as far as fuel and maintenance numbers, I used what we're doing right now. So the fuel is not going to be.
Probably
I would
less.
hope the
Yeah.
fuel is not going to be
Yeah.
as high as a patrol car. So
It seems like, and I'll look at Adam, I mean, it seems like, when you look at the 75%, then you say, well, the expectation is they have a vehicle to get to the different schools and stuff, that I would think something like you'd either pay for mileage that they do because they may need to go to meetings or go to a student's house, maybe. I'm not sure. There's probably things to do, that the coverage besides the salary would include maybe mileage, and there may be other items that have to be done, like a uniform or whatever, or anything special like that.
The reason we didn't go through mileage is if we never ever had to use 4 cars at once, we would have a car available for the person to come down and take. That's when you do mileage. What he figured out was this is their car. This is going to be
right.
So it's not mileage; it's just a matter of that's their car to drive.
Right.
But we thought it was important when we saw what CVU or the district put out. A car is required.
Yeah.
So that's when he came in.
Yeah, I see.
So in all,
Yeah.
Transparency, the $43 in based on what the select board, if they want to add to that for other overhead, we've got that money to tack on, where Shelburne and Williston may not, they've got
Need
more
to do
cars
that.
than we do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd even have to get another car.
Right. Okay.
And our 75% would be 75% of the total service, whatever that
Yeah.
happens to be. So
Yes.
we-
Right.
we
Oh,
would be
okay. So
factoring in.
yes.
Yeah, so
Right.
I guess what I think
So,
is we really should
yeah.
figure out what is the real cost to us of having an additional officer, and then 75% of that
If that's what
is
the
what
hours
the
are,
proposal
yeah.
is. Yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's
And then
something
what
we
happens
could-
with overtime? Because if this officer is really, we're estimating it really on only a 40-hour week, but if that officer is around, I would expect there'd be opportunities for overtime. And then, how does that get
Well,
factored in?
that's got to be, if it's overtime because they're at CVU, then obviously that's got to be built into the contract as that cushion. Like we
And
built.
every agreement that I've seen as well has it that the SRO serve, if there's an emergency, that person is saying to me, I'm out of here, I'm going to help whatever's happening in the town, whatever's, if it's a local town, they're responding to that, which is pretty normal. So some of the calculations can get a little strange if you really get into the details of it, but we would obviously support that.
So if Williston or Shelburne takes this on, they're actually only going to have use of that officer during the summer.
unless, you know, if there's an emergency, that person's going. You know, they're not staying at the school. So it's hard to say that.
But that's the main time that they
Yeah.
would be using that officer.
Correct.
But if there's an emergency at CVU, our
Everyone's
department's,
going, right.
our department's coming. Yeah, Hinesburg department
all
is showing up.
community.
Yeah.
And you say those towns need another officer.
They've I'm sorry, they got full-time positions that are open.
Yeah.
So they're
Williston's
still-
2.
They're presently looking to hire, they already got hires. to
And this
just
might be a
fill
more
their position.
attractive
Right.
hire.
Right.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
think
but
it would
that
be.
would not fill, because if they got the SRO, then instead of being down 2, they're down 3.
Right.
The attractive part of the SO would just make them level again, and they'd still need the 2, so.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, so Frank, your percentages of distributing, it's 73.1% on CVU and 26.9 for us.
Right,
And the proposal is 75-25, so,
well, close.
yeah, so it's close, but just, so the number's made.
And so, I mean, I suppose, well, we could talk about, you know, the next steps, but, you know, potentially a next step would be to take the chief's numbers and maybe as a group sort of massage them or come up, you know, thinking of a vehicle and what do we include, what don't we include, and maybe come up with something that seems, you know, as close as we can to what an actual cost could be.
Have we seen the contracts with other schools? Like South Burlington's or
I
other
haven't looked
schools?
at their contracts now.
That would be
Yeah.
good to
I
see.
think that'd be good to
Yeah.
really understand how they're estimating those costs.
Yeah, particularly this model here, like
Yeah.
if South Burlington's like that, if we're able to look at that or get something similar, that would be good, just
See, I
so.
would expect it's different, because South Burlington is only South Burlington. Burlington's only
Right,
Burlington.
right.
We're a union high school, so South Burlington would just simply be footing the whole bill to have a police officer.
Right, but
Right.
it's a question of whether it's coming out of the police budget or the school budget. I think that's where the
Right.
issue is.
And what some of the things about, you know, if the officer gets called away from the school, do they keep track of those hours? Do they, you know, the school's got a big week going on, I don't know, graduation week is probably more than 40 hours that week, you know, or some events at night or something like that. So there might be some weeks where there's more than 40 hours, so do they pay over, do they cover the overtime? And so, you know, maybe you go into it saying, here's the costs, but it gets adjusted however, based on some actual mileage or actual hours. So it would be good to take a look at that, just to sort of see.
One of the-
Or the other
other
union,
union
like
high
U32
school,
Yeah.
or in
Mansfield is
Brattleboro,
close.
Mount
Yeah.
Mansfield, yeah.
But see, if you know, and it's certainly, we can't ask what the other schools or the other departments are doing, but if you've got an amount from Shelburne that says 65 an hour or something like that, you know that we are working to come up with a feasible number. If Shelburne, you say, for example, is telling you 45 an hour, we can't, we can't compete with that, so.
So Frank, am I correct in assuming that Hinesburg really doesn't have an elevated need for police during the summer more than the rest of the year? Is it, or
I
do
mean, we have more vacation, but,
but
not-
it's pretty even throughout the year?
yes.
And do you have any idea, is it different in Shelburne? Because they do have more tourists there, more summer people?
Shelburne's got a lot more overtime because of bike races and the museum and things like that.
Yeah. So the music fest.
And the music
Yeah, the
fest,
music,
so.
Right, so they might actually have use for an extra officer during those 2 months of the summer?
Well, they've got to know what the request is. So that's what I'm saying is, like I said, if Shelburne says that they can do it for 45, then we can't match that, even regardless of the amount of work we do.
Sure.
So that's something you got to consider when you're talking to them in Williston.
And just let you, MMU contracts with Chittenden County Sheriff's Department. So
So they have a dedicated sheriff?
that's
officer
at the school. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that sheriff's deputy can be switched out.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Whoever's available.
Just tasting
Yeah, well, what
water.
happens when the officer is sick? Do one of our officers go there? I mean,
Yes, that would be part of it, is we
Yeah.
backfill.
yeah.
Well, I very much appreciate you entertaining this. I
Yeah,
know that it's
yeah.
a bit of a shock out of the regular budget cycle and those types of things, but we felt strongly about it from the start. I've continued to feel that way, I think, for many of the reasons that you mentioned, Tom, and so it feels like we have to do our due diligence and the commitment to our kids to be moving this quickly, and it puts people in an uncomfortable position, certainly when you're trying to say, well, what do our voters feel and think, and that's hard. So I appreciate you thinking about it and talking about it.
I think the select board could open up and ask for input from the voters, potentially. Not a 5-hour discussion though, but I think it would be hard to do unless we could be more definitive. Like, here's what it costs. Here's sort of how it would work. And I think we were maybe 50% there or 60% there. But there's a couple of questions that unless you are pretty clear, then it might be hard for people to make decisions. But you got to be able to answer those questions. So
we have 2 more meetings that we have prior to the September 18th meeting. So if there's other discussion we want to have, we want to open it up for public input,
or maybe,
there's an opportunity.
Maybe we could just raise some questions and try to get our own questions answered. And potentially we could discuss whether we want to do that. Yeah.
Well, I think your back of the envelope calculations there is certainly a place that I feel more comfortable with really understanding what the true costs are of having whether we have a 6-member police department or a 7-member police department, of which the district is paying a portion of that 7th person, or having 7, because in a sense we are making a commitment to providing an SRO to there. So if the person is sick, we're doing that. So I think it's really thinking about the implications of having a 7-member department, 5 vehicles, how that affects then overtime for, overtime gets calculated into everybody's understanding of what they're going to be making as a salary. It's not just their 40 hours. So I think we need to really put it out there to Hinesburg residents, and I think to the whole district, because, to think that there's, close to, well, at least $90,000 that is going to be coming from various budgets is like, well, where's it coming from? We can deficit spend, and the district can as well. But I think, I don't think we have any extra in our budget that we know, well, we could take it out of this. So I think the more that we can involve the public in understanding it, and I would think the majority of people will be, people will be interested. I think there'll be a lot of opinions on it.
But my impression is that you would like to have a commitment from a town as soon as possible, and my impression from what you've said is that Williston and Shelburne might be ready to give you that. So while we're wondering how do we talk to the voters and involve the people of Hinesburg in this, you might have already have something, an agreement signed.
We don't yet, but that's possible.
And we already support CVU in regular activities, right, Frank? So we could argue that we're already spending a portion of our budget for this. I mean, not in exactly the outline that
one of the
needed.
things we did a long time ago, long before I think everybody but Andrea, was we had Doug Olafson
That's what I was trying to find.
And he came up with 17%. Approximately 17% of our alarms and all of that stuff was at CVU. And it was a decision that number wasn't solid enough to go ahead and say, CVU, could you give us 17% of this amount of money? So we kind of eat it. But if you look at the other place, Virgins has a union high school. From what I understand, they get no money from it either. It's historical that if there's not an SRO, if the union high school is in your town, you deal with it. And you also deal with the kids that are spending more money at Paisley Hippo and Chevy Mart.
There's a benefit.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
They're getting speeding
Public
tickets.
house
And,
on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes get a little, maybe having just grown up here and gone to CVU, and I've always seen CVU being in Hinesburg as a mutually beneficial relationship, and words like a drain on a town or something like that rub me the wrong way. Yeah, I would hope so. I think, yeah,
It's our biggest employer.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
any
I mean,
employer would.
But you
would
could
agree.
argue with that 17%, we're only 8% off of what we're talking about in a way. If we're looking to need to come up with 25%, of what we're spending.
yeah, but we're adding a person. So
Right.
it's
I mean,
not
so
just,
yes, I mean, there's more to this than that, but I mean, my point is we're already acting in this capacity. It's just
I think that 17% is gonna be there regardless, because it has to do with the things that are happening on and off campus,
but they're
right?
primarily on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it
okay.
would,
It's true,
A
though.
little
It's not
bit. There'd be
entirely
a little bit
100%.
benefit-
It would,
A little
but-
bit benefit, it would provide a little additional capacity, I guess, that, somebody's already there. And and I agree, it's mutually beneficial to have the school here. One, we don't have to travel to go to high school, which is, extremely valuable, I think. And so I think it's a pretty, in my opinion, it's pretty well balanced. So wouldn't want CVU to come by and charge us to have the school in the town either. All right, so I think, do we want to,
I think we have a
What do you-
lot to move forward
Yeah.
on here. I think this is actually pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so my suggestion would be perhaps over the next week, we could, if we have more questions, we could float them through Renee. I'm happy to talk to you about sort of how I look at the budget, and I know how you look at it. Maybe there's a couple of questions that have come up. Maybe we could sort of try to get more clarity one way or the other. Doesn't matter. And then
And Jean Jensen was very regretful to not be able to be here tonight, but she's our numbers whiz. So if you have any questions, she's much more suited to answer
and
than
just
I am.
tell us your timeline now. The next meeting is September 18th, when you expect there could be a decision, and then in between there you'll be meeting with the other two towns.
We've already met with the
Oh, you've already have. Okay, and are they giving you proposals then?
No.
Not yet. Okay. I think just keep us informed
Yeah,
on what's happening.
of course.
And I think if you want to encourage us to keep going through this process rather than sitting back, let us know that too.
Yeah, our plan is to be fully transparent with everybody, and we're all. It's a small enough state that you're not going to get away with anything else but that anyway. So.
Okay.
So, Marilia, were you indicating that we might be, or Frank, you were saying that Shelburne, another town might come in at 45, so are we engaging in a bidding war here, or?
No, we're engaging at what it would cost us to put an officer at CVU.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with, okay, well, Shelburne's doing 48, I'll do 47.
Yeah, okay.
We're going to give them a true number
Okay.
and then let the chips go where they are.
Right.
Okay?
But
And
it's
I
fair
think,
enough to say that this is a draft proposal. This isn't anything
Oh, no,
we've
absolutely.
officially given. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And I would say that it, it'd be interesting to know from the school board whether, let's say Williston or Shelburne does give you a proposal that is, how much is the dollar amount going to be a factor into the decision?
Well, yeah, but it's a taxpayer. Maybe it should be because we're all competent. I mean, no matter whether it's us or Shelburne or Williston, you're going to get a competent SRO up there. So it's got to be about a dollar amount to me at the end.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to know, is if that's whether that would be the decision that the school board is making, is on the dollar amount.
And so, this proposal, Adam, that you have there, is that like a final proposal, or is that just your draft proposal? Because wouldn't the school board, if they vote, need to come up with a contract?
Yeah, this is
conceptual proposal.
This is a more dialed in draft than what
Yeah.
we came with last time.
Yeah.
So just trying to.
So maybe we could continue
Narrow
to
the
at least
focus.
work on that too,
Sure.
because, I mean, if you know, you did go out and get more than one bid, or 3 bids, maybe even, I mean, you'd want to make sure it's all apples to apples too.
Right.
So,
You know, I just have to say, Williston needs officers, Shelburne needs officers. You say they've got extra vehicles. It seems like one of those, and they would like to take this on, it seems like they should. We don't need another officer. Our town residents don't want to put more money into the police budget.
Well, see, part of my belief is it's my obligation to try to get this contract. The school is in our town and all of that, but the decision is gonna come from the 5 of you, and whatever happens, happens, and we deal with it. But I feel I have an obligation to try, and then,
and you know, I think the fact that we have a full force, and that they're having trouble filling them, you know.
by the way, there's 33 open police positions in Chittenden County right now. 33. So,
Yeah.
And I would just say that the reason also that every chief we've talked to, you know, and they have perspectives that I don't. You say, of course, Hinesburg makes the most sense. So I don't know that it would just be a dollar decision. I think we want to provide the best service possible.
For the
So
dollars,
yeah.
yeah.
So
All right. Well, good. Thanks,
Yeah,
Adam.
thank you. I appreciate
thanks,
it.
Chief.
see you at basketball camp tomorrow. Probably. Yeah. As usual.
Tryouts are next month.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam. We're in touch.
All right. How did we do on our? Pretty good. Huh? Yeah. That was a good decision. So I had suggested that we could, you know, write up some questions or thoughts, at least gather them all. And then maybe next week, let's just put some time on the agenda to have a discussion, again, more with the select board, but if somebody from the town wanted to come, you know, and give their opinion, that'd be certainly okay, of course. But more, and then maybe we might get an update on where the school is, because there's a lot of moving parts.
Are you saying next meeting? though?
The next meeting, not the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow
So,
morning.
and that'll be the first Thursday in September because Monday is a
All
Labor.
right, one
is
more Thursday. So, right, in September.
And then after that, it
And then
turns
it turns
to
to
the
Monday.
Mondays,
Yeah.
unless you guys
And,
have a better.
and maybe at Select Board Forum, I was gonna say, let's just take a look at the calendar, make sure we're all,
Yeah, thank
you know,
you.
we're all the same, yeah.
On the same.
All right.
But my biggest concern is to really look at the total budget. You know, I think just looking at salary, I mean, just the idea of another car, uniform, gun, all that stuff really adds to the costs. And you know, there may be a break-even point where you get a department of, you know, over 10 people, and, you know, adding one more
Isn't that big?
isn't that big, but
Yeah.
it feels like,
Yeah.
you know, I like looking at the total
I think
costs.
you're right. I think Phil's right.
Yeah.
That we have made it clear, Frank has made it clear to the voters that
We're good.
this is,
Yeah.
that we're good.
Yeah,
And for me, if the entire district wanted to share 100% of the cost, it would be a no-brainer. It would be a no-brainer. It'd be a win-win for everybody and how we share it. Maybe it's a matter of sharing that 25% during
Yeah.
the summer. For events, maybe the
Yeah,
Shelburne
yeah.
Museum
Yeah,
events,
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But my gut tells me the taxpayers are not going to support it.
yeah.
And I hate to put a whole lot of extra effort into it with that in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay.
And
Next
I
up,
think, I mean, Frank is right. He's doing his duty
Sure,
and
sure.
being
Yeah.
of service to the CVU, and I think
Yeah.
we all are, but, so,
okay,
I appreciated his effort.
I do too. I think, and I'll say it, I said it before, I think a number of years ago, the Hinesburg Police Department wasn't welcomed there, you know, and that's really turned around, I'd say, in the last number of years. So now they are welcomed and they are part of the school process, certainly the safety process, so. All right, next item is to consider changes to Appendix E on the water use ordinances. This was the allocation between commercial and residential. We had and I described our process before of doing that, saying this looks good, but not really, you know, sold that this is the exact proper allocation number for that particular district. So we had an applicant who needed a bit more in one and less in another, and so we talked about changing that appendix, and that's it there.
Yeah, so that's in category 2 is what you guys discussed changing that. It was still the 10,000 before. You'd had it evenly allocated between residential and enterprise at 5,000 each, and now you're considering, based on the last meeting, you were considering doing a 7,500, 2,500 split.
I'll make a motion to adopt Appendix E as part of our water ordinance. The annual allocation pool designation form is Appendix E. It's my motion.
Okay. Seconded.
Am I remembering correctly that this can be revised on a yearly basis?
It does
Correct.
get,
Yeah, it does.
it gets looked at every year as, at a minimum,
Okay.
I think, in the June prior to July
Right.
1st. And I appreciate that it says draft, so we don't
Right.
get them lost and,
Yeah.
you know, which one's the right one.
If
And
you
there
look
is
at the
a,
bottom, if you look at the bottom,
There is
you'll
a date.
also see draft to be approved by the
Yeah.
Hinesburg Select Board and at
Okay.
today's date. So
and there'll be a date there, so.
once we
Yeah.
have this approved tonight, then we'll change that footer to as approved by the Hinesburg Select Board on August 16th, 2018.
And I think last time we talked about it, Alex had given us a couple of options, and this was the one he preferred too. So, any more discussion on it?
It
No,
just, it seems to be reasonable given what the water system has been through over the last couple of years, I guess, maybe even more than that now, and how long these projects have been going on. It seems like that's what's in the works, and it still allows for plenty of,
So flexible. You know, as we
it's
need to
still
respond.
flexible,
Yeah.
but it seems to take care of what's in front of us.
Did you have something, Andrea? No?
No, I was appreciating that the draft was not only at the bottom, but it was on the top on the,
Yes.
for those of us that don't always scroll to the bottom.
Right.
Well, we want to change that later, so it then says as a.
Right, but
Right.
it just even
Oh, so
pulling
you
it
can
up,
see
I really
this.
like that it's there.
Yes, there you go.
Good, all right, so,
Motion
the
second.
motion's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion for Appendix E allocations, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so the motion passed. Very good.
Okay.
So I guess I get to sign
Yeah.
that, so.
And then also you guys wanted to look at what you'd asked Eric for this, the history on the allocation holding charge history.
So this got dropped in today or?
Yeah, Eric sent it
sometime?
this morning.
Yeah,
So we put it in.
so maybe we'll just take a look at it. So these are the allocations that are being held. Some of them we approved, I think, the last meeting to extend them.
Right.
And help me out, is there a limit to how many times we can do that? I don't think so. Right? They pay a holding fee.
Right. As long as there's actively work being happening, I believe is,
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay.
there is a limit.
yeah. But they can renew it if they're able to show that there's active
Okay,
progress.
well, yeah.
And the
Yeah.
issue was that some of the ones that are in parentheses, in brackets, were just an assumption, because we didn't have a water allocation ordinance at the time, so there's that's the calculations that are now being used, but they were never given an allocation. They didn't go through a permit process to get those.
What do you say? Can you back up? There
If you look
wasn't-
at the bottom, if you look at his notation on the bottom, water allocation shown in brackets or grandfathered pre.
So
2000.
pre-2016, we didn't have a water allocation ordinance. And so when we're doing the calculations, those parcels, they applied for a wastewater allocation and they just were automatically getting water.
Oh,
with
okay.
it.
I was just looking at the Ellen Foster one, which is newly acquired by her because of the previous owner.
Previous owner.
Okay.
That was,
That's
yeah.
all. That helps.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Can I? On June 22nd of this year, the last time we looked at what's remaining, was that calculated in that? I don't remember seeing in the reserves.
Should
I
have been.
think it should have been, yes. The
Okay,
what's been
because it's a pretty
allocated.
significant number, and I
Yeah.
just don't remember seeing it.
I'm not sure it was in the June 22nd one. It might have, because we didn't adopt it on June 20. We
No,
didn't
I
adopt
mean like
it.
last time we looked at it, like
So
last
the last
meeting.
time was
Yes.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was taken out.
That's
Yeah.
how we made that motion and then approved it back when we talked about it,
Right.
or we accounted for it,
As long as we did, because
Yeah.
I just
Right, and
I
I
want to
think.
make sure the numbers on what the reserves are.
I believe we did, yes.
Right, and I think
Right.
I did specifically ask Eric a question regarding that because we were just looking at the ones whose permits needed to be renewed. And this is, because they have to get renewed every 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
this, though, is,
Tennessee for
I
the
think,
water.
a complete
This is-
list
yeah, this is
of
the final
everybody who
list,
has an
right.
allocation.
Okay. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that because
Yeah.
it's so recent,
Yeah.
and we've looked at this for
Yeah, that's a good question. We tend to,
Yeah.
you know how we work.
well,
Yeah, so.
I just want to make sure that that's been deducted from.
Right.
From
Yeah,
Our
our
capacity.
reserve, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we could
Yeah.
go back and look
It would
at,
just be nice to
let's just-
double check that.
well,
make
let's
sure.
look, okay?
Let's do that,
Approved
sure.
residential capacity unconnected is, somebody can add 7,960 and
7,000.
9,011.
60 plus 9,011.
Yep.
6971.
Right, so, and actually, this number is 22,788. So there is some discrepancy, right? So on this one that we just approved before, right? It's the approved residential allocation is that, and then the enterprise. So you add those two numbers. And then, then add, did somebody have that number? Then add 19,350.
19 to 16,
Yeah.
25.
So the allocation water is, it says 22,788.
Yeah.
So those numbers
But
should,
the reserves are different than that. This is what's been allocated, and we were looking a minute ago at the reserves. Or the
But-
existing capacity.
yeah, but that's the approved
Oh, you're right, approved
allocations.
allocations.
Those numbers shouldn't they?
We were just looking at the actual Appendix E, trying to match
Yeah.
Appendix E to those amounts is what we were doing. And it was not actually matching.
Right.
Right.
You're right.
It's 16 versus 22.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's actually
Almost
3,000
17.
more than the NRG that I was.
yeah.
Yep. It's almost 17.
So we probably should.
We should find out.
We should look back at this document. This might not.
Well, we don't know which one's not correct,
Correct.
so. Well, we may have to amend Appendix E.
This will live
I
on our
wonder
agenda
if,
for a long time.
I wonder if some of it's like a moving target too, although these are sitting there as in holding.
There's definitely a relationship between these two documents.
Right.
Not quite sure what it is.
So maybe we'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ask Eric for.
It may just be understanding it. So, we did approve the motion.
That's why I
To
said we
change
may have
Appendix
to,
E, yeah.
we might have to amend it.
All right, the next item on the agenda is consider approving water wastewater application. So there's just one
Yep.
for us. It's the one we've looked at now for 3 weeks in a row, or three meetings in a row. And I don't know, what, Brett can't come to a meeting once in a while?
No, I actually
So,
offered
yeah.
him the option of not coming tonight if he so chose, and then I could text him if we had questions, so he gave me his cell phone number.
So do we have that in our
We
packet
don't,
that,
from last week.
from last time?
Last meeting.
It should be in this one too, isn't it?
Isn't it? No, I don't think so.
It's not?
No.
Well, it was intended to be, but yes, it's in the last
So it
meeting
would have
packet.
been in August 2nd.
4A, I think is it.
4A, yep.
Can't see. You need your glasses. I did bring them this time. Denial is starting to,
Catch up with you.
yeah.
So I think we've seen this maybe 3 times in a row. The first time there was a question about whether it was 100% accurate. It turned out it was, I guess. There was some questions about it.
Yeah.
The second time we realized we needed to change the allocation for category 2, and so now we're looking at the request or application for water and sewer.
My understanding from other meetings, you didn't have any particular concerns about, now you've gotten all of your questions answered on this application. And so once you revised Appendix E, then
Yes, we can make them.
Anybody feel like making a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion to approve the application of Hinesburg Center Phase 2 for water allocation. Isn't it, we're just doing the water because we did the wastewater already, right? For the amounts in the amounts specified in the application.
Dated July
Dated
12th,
Yeah. okay.
2018.
Yes.
this is an application for water and sewer capacity.
Is that
Yes, but I think we did vote on the sewer one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think,
If not, we'd include that in.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And it was signed on the July 10th. The memo is the 18th.
So I'll second that if you're done.
yeah, I'm done.
Second?
Any discussion? Note that there is allocation fees due, but doesn't, our ordinance doesn't necessarily say, but they're not allowed to get a certificate of occupancy until it is paid. So
Yeah.
that's the default in there.
Yes.
But we may choose to have that sooner than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye, so that motion passed. Okay. The next, item 7 is a proposed contract from Frost Beer. They have requested additional water capacity. It's really an addition to their existing allocation as they expand their business. I think two things happened. One was it's a pretty significant number, 75,000 roughly, for the additional allocation. And two is it would take a while to do the construction before they're actually using that capacity. And there was, I think, a question saying, well, when is it due? Is it due today? Is it due, at the end? Our ordinance is silent to when the fee is actually due. We suggested that Frost, they said, we're happy to do a payment plan over time, and we suggested they provide a contract in this case that shows that, and that we would consider it. So you might introduce yourself.
I'm Garen Frost from Frost Beer Works. I'm also Garen Frost from Frost Investments, which is this contracts between Frost Investments and Town of Hinesburg. But yeah, I actually, I didn't even know the allocation fee honestly even existed. No, it's probably my fault. Obviously, I paid the application fee, and I thought, oh, if I get granted this allocation, it's all good. And then when I saw that there was 75,000 due, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like it's a fairly large number to not have been thought through. And our allocation when I was working with Eric on the numbers, it's kind of like a best case scenario in that building. And I honestly don't even think we'll get to the allocation in a year from now. But I'd rather just do it and be done with it and pay the money, and then as we ramp up production, I'm not gonna have to keep coming back to you guys saying, oh, I want to move from 1,200 gallons a day to 1,500 or whatever. So we came up with what we thought was kind of the best case, and at this point, I think I'm already a little bit over my allocation. So that was one of the things, is like I wanted to, and when I first talked to Eric, I wanted to do something that was going to cover me for what we're currently using. And he's like, well, he's like, we have the water, but I didn't know there was any number associated with it. So obviously I want to do what makes sense for everybody, and I think it makes sense to allocate it, but I'd like to, just sort of phase in the payment,
Because then there's a holding fee on top of that.
Yeah, I don't know about the holding fee. What is the holding fee?
Well, if you don't use it
If you
right
don't
away.
use it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you think
Okay.
you're
What
gonna
is
use it 2 years from now, then there's a holding fee you're allocated it, but you're not actually using it.
Got you. Okay. And does the holding fee apply every invoice cycle, or is it every 3 cycles? How do you
Every
work
3
that?
years.
I think,
right?
yeah.
So it'll look back on what I've used versus what's allocated, or what's?
No, the holding fee is if you haven't started construction or hooked up or done anything, and I think
Oh, I
we're
got you.
in this
Yeah.
position because basically you're an
Right.
existing operation, and so we don't have,
Right.
This hasn't happened that much.
Yeah, and I don't
So-
see any. Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue to ramp up usage. So yeah, I mean, but I, if there is a holding fee between what we use and what we're allocated, I would obviously, if I knew what the pricing structure was, I wouldn't be opposed to that unless it was horrendous. But right, yeah, exactly, 75 every year.
No, so I think in this case, it doesn't really apply because you're already hooked up.
Right.
So, but I think, you asking about, well, how fast do we have to pay this? We realize now in our ordinance, it's not clear. And,
Right.
and I think we want to go forward and make it clear, but make it fair too. So I think that's why we said, well, let's just come up with, put it in writing on what's going to happen, and then I think the select board would consider that. It's in our packet, contract written up by Joe Fallon.
but who's representing?
Yes,
Here.
that's correct, yes.
It seems like a very reasonable proposal to me. I mean, that's a lot of money.
It is.
And we want to try to promote business in Hinesburg, good businesses, and Frost is certainly one of them. So I'm fully in favor of this, so I'll make a motion to accept the agreement between Frost Investment Group and the town of Hinesburg for payment of the allocation fee.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for bringing this to us because it's through these processes that we become sharper, right? You said it right. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money that can potentially be used in 1,000 other ways, of which you can give me 2,000 reasons, and to your point, have it in writing and making it fair to everybody is in the interest of everybody. Absolutely. So, yes, 100% support it.
I would just like some clarification in the agreement of how many gallons per day it is, what the allocation is, so that we have some reference in that document itself.
Yeah, I think we should probably tie it back then to the just put the application.
Yes.
The application information, because we don't want to have, repetitive. Exactly. So we'll refer back to the application in payment of application, whatever.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, so that
Yep.
all the information is attached to this agreement.
Understood. Yeah. Or the agreement's attached to the application, because it'll be associated with the
Right.
application fee. Yeah.
And is the application not Frost Investment Corporation?
It is Frost Investment Group.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so I would just
Yeah.
want to make sure that all of our little i's and t's
Yeah,
are...
Joe actually wrote it up to be Frost Beer Works, and I was like, well, the application is under the
Okay.
The person who owns the real estate, or the company that owns the real estate, which is Frost Investment Group, so it makes
Okay.
sense that.
Yeah, all right.
I
Yeah,
think-
because we got to know who's the
Exactly.
responsible party.
Right. So, I think there were a couple of technical questions we had. We could continue to ask more technical questions, but I'm totally happy with, we got it, it's pretty clear. Let's move forward. Let the company, do what they need to do. Appreciate that they are willing to grow in Hinesburg, and I assume your site's working out well for you
It is
where you are.
a little cramped, unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
but, it's
That's better than the other way around.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably good because it's keeping me, just keeping everything in check, and we can't do anything, too big, which I think is good. But it'd be nice to have a little more room. It's just a little difficult, but.
As long as you can fit the taco truck in still, you're good.
I'm not the taco truck guy. I'll just tell you that. But I think it's people want to have things to eat when they, so it's kind of like I think it's great for the people that are enjoying the beer there. But for me, I really just wanted to produce really good beer and package really good beer. But I understand there's another side to that, where you got to be really. I like the customer facing aspect of it, but. It's a little difficult when you're not the one. Like I did at one point have plans for, a really nice tap room with food and everything, but it's just I don't.
It's a whole other business.
And it's difficult enough, with employees in the brewing industry. It's the restaurant industry is really not my area of expertise. So.
You're smart to keep it that way.
Yeah, trust me, I'm trying. Yeah, I was definitely. I was kicking and screaming when we had the taco truck coming in, but it's it is what it is. It's good and people like it. So
Yes, they do.
and she makes great tacos, so it's
Yes,
and
she
it
does.
gives it that sort of local
Yeah.
yeah. So it does connect with the community, and I guess I can say I talk about how great the beer is in Vermont when I see people who aren't from Vermont, and there have been people who have said I've heard of Frost, and
Absolutely.
so
Same here.
we're fortunate to have two really good breweries that seem to have a real good name for themselves. And
foam is amazing as well. Foam's not really touting Hinesburg quite as much as I do. Everything we do is like, we tag Hinesburg on it, and it's, I think it's a win-win to whatever degree that can actually be possible. But I think it's great. It's great being in Hinesburg. And clearly, if we were in Burlington, we'd have a lot more traffic. But Hinesburg's great. Centrally isolated.
Hey, that's a really good tagline.
That's beautiful.
all right, so we have the motion. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of approving this agreement as written, attached to the allocation application, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. And thanks for working with us on this.
Thank you.
And let us know, or let Renee or Joy know if there's anything else you guys need, so.
Perfect, thank you very much, I appreciate it. I'm excited.
All right.
Oh, yes, I should have done that, I
You
think,
sign
last
in
time.
there, you leave all the samples off.
Yeah, that's right. I'll unload the
I don't know
back
how
of
we
the truck.
approve, how we approve that
I
without the
love the day I
samples.
saw you with your hand truck going on the sidewalk delivering to Hinesburg
Oh, yeah,
Public
that was
House.
actually-
I was like, this is really local.
Yeah, very low.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So do we need to think about the ordinance with,
Well, we talked about that. I think we'll put that on our list of things.
on the list? Yeah.
to-
Not that we
to
do it tonight,
right.
but
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the ordinance for next meeting, you want to?
No, I don't think
No,
it needs
just
to
like
be,
a-
but, yeah.
like a
as
to-do list.
time
Yes,
permits,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't anticipate, either we'll get 2 more right away or we won't get any for
Right.
a couple of years, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's how that goes usually.
All right,
It was just on your long list of stuff to do.
We'll
Just
go out the
prioritize.
Scroll.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
prioritize this
right.
one lower, I guess.
roll out this.
Thanks, Renee.
Next item is the town administrator's report.
All right. Okay.
And we had a couple things in our packet, were there?
Yeah, let me just
Yeah.
pull some of this up. So, couple of things, the update on the discussion with CSWD. So as I told you, we had a meeting last Friday, with Sarah Reeves and Josh Tyler from CSWD. And so Joy and I were part of that meeting, and then we asked Mitch to join us, partway through, so to help with, potentially a DRB application. As we talked with Sarah and Josh, it became clear that they're not quite ready yet. They are having bigger discussions organization-wide about their drop-off centers and what they want them to look like, where they need to invest, and they want to make that sort of across the board, rather than just looking at one at a time. And so it doesn't sound like they're going to be ready to probably even put in an application to our DRB until perhaps next spring. I did reiterate how much that Hinesburg would like them to come back, and that we are ready. We gave them an update of where we are with the project, the highway garage project.
Did you go look at the site?
We didn't go look at the site, but she had been there. She's driven by recently because it's on her way to work. She would like to have sort of a public forum with Hinesburg residents to get an understanding of what they're looking for in a drop-off center. I did revisit conversations we've had in the past, and I think Andrea had reiterated that I think they were happy. Our residents were happy with what was offered at our previous site, and we weren't looking to add to that. But they seem to want that there's certain things that have changed in their regulations, but there's also things that they want to offer at the drop-off centers. So they may be looking to change it a little bit, and so they need to see what it is that it was important to her or important to them to find out what our residents really want. So they'd like to have some sort of public forum, perhaps here, to hear from residents what they're looking for.
They could do it on a Saturday morning. That'll get some folks.
I would welcome
Yeah.
a public forum.
Right.
I think absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think I would encourage all Hinesburg residents to let the CSWD staff
Right.
and our board members, Lynn
Yep.
Gardner and Doug Taft, and any other board members people might know, in letters to them, and that we would hold a public forum here, that we would be glad to jointly host
Right. And
a public forum, that
and
we are
discuss
aware
this,
of
yeah.
the dates that they're setting, and we'll
Right.
our staff can work with their staff to hold a meeting sometime as soon as possible, because our site, the site that we had set aside for them will be available for them to have started construction at the beginning of October, which was the schedule that we had proposed to them in the very beginning, and had anticipated that they would be coming then and would have been going through their process of getting their permits during this past 6 months. So the sooner we can have a public forum, and the more that I would encourage citizens to let CSWD know. We, as the select board, have consistently worked with them and demonstrated and acknowledged that we hear from residents all the time that they appreciated having it here for the last 25 years or more, and look forward to having it back.
And we did communicate with her that we could host it right up in the main hall, let us know, we could put it on the calendar, schedule it, and start.
So there wasn't any schedule or any proposed time frame. Maybe that's something we can help them
Is there any way
with.
that we can get word out to the public, like a letter like they sent out to all the residents of Hinesburg, to let them know? Because everybody wanted this at town meeting.
Right.
Bill Lippert suggested that we have a
made a
resolution.
motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everybody voted for it, and the expectation was that, first expectation was that in August, the town garage would be finished, and pretty soon the drop-off center would be done. To say they're not even gonna start until the spring, if then, is...
So she wasn't saying that they're not coming back by any means. She just was saying they need to give it more time to really figure out what it is, what the needs are, what type of capital planning they need to do on their end for all of these drop-off centers, and
I
go
just
from
think
there.
if there's any way that we can get this information, is there a way we can get this information out to the residents of
Yeah,
Hinesburg?
we certainly can, and we can also, let her know, see what time, when she'd want to do her public forum, and then schedule that date, and then inform the public as well, at that same time, to let them know.
Do we have to wait until that moment? Because my experience is that takes a long time to schedule a meeting with Chittenden County Solid Waste. And we have this information now. It would be great if residents could know about this like tomorrow.
So I'd like to go a step further than what Mary Lee and Andrea have said, because I think we're being played in a PR game on Front Porch Forum and elsewhere, and our residents are being led somewhere that's simply not factual.
Right.
I read these posts saying that the Hinesburg Selectboard isn't doing the most that they can, pursuing it, and I'm tired of it, to be blunt.
Right.
And I think we need to let our residents know that we've done all we can, and if you want CSWD to come back, you need to contact them directly.
Right.
Because I'm sick of being the middleman here.
Right.
Because we have done absolutely everything we can and should do to have the drop-off center in Hinesburg. Everything, and then some. And it just continues to roll on.
And I did let them know that it seems like some of our residents are getting misinformation as far as what's going on. And so I just wanted to make sure that's clear, that, so they knew where our steps, where we were in our process. We are ready for them. I mean, they could have applied, put their application into the DRB, because that's the first step that they need to do. And that site will be available to start construction, this fall.
Can we send a letter out saying exactly what you said to the residents of Hinesburg, so that it's coming from us and not wait for CWSD to put their spin on it?
Yeah, we certainly can do that.
I think it's important at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a draft in the works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be the forum? Would we put the letter in the Citizen? Would we send a letter out, which costs a little bit of money? Would we post it on the
I think
website?
we can do the website, Facebook, the Citizen, the Record, whatever their schedule is. Heck, we could even hand them out door to door, or stand, at a drop center, right, in Williston or something. I don't know. I think the word would get out pretty quickly.
I think
Just
it would be
without
important
spending
to
money.
send it out to each.
In the mail?
Yeah, in the mail, and spend the money. I think it's worth the money. This is something that the residents voted on at town meeting.
I don't
and-
disagree that it would be worth the money, but I think we would reach the same folks without spending the money, is my guess. Not that I disagree with it's worth the money, but I think we would get the word out.
Well, also because Chittenden County Solid Waste sent a letter out previously that we all got.
To say they were
Yes, they
temporarily
sent a
leaving.
letter.
They did.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I would
Yeah.
support the idea of sending a letter
And,
as well.
you know, we could know too that when we talked about the new highway garage, the expectation was they would be in a temporary site.
Yes.
That they really weren't leaving, and then, you know, for their reasons, they said it would be best for us to temporarily leave. They've always implied that there was their expectation that they would come back, but now, you know, during this time, they're starting to look, it's sort of a holistic
Globally.
look at their entire operation, and so that rather than it being a decision as to just coming back to Hinesburg, they're tying it together with entire look at their operation, which I can respect that, you know, that they might need to do that. But the fact is, I think Tom's right and Mary Lee in that, you know, there's an appearance that the town is not working hard to get them back, and I think we've all worked hard to get them back, to try to give them a good site, the best, you know, location in our, and we've spent a lot of money to accommodate them already. If we
And they've
weren't
spent money as well.
Yes.
They have paid
for the new well,
they paid for the new, a
Yeah.
portion of the new well. They've paid for the electrical conduits because we know the location, so they have paid. So, you know, it has appeared to us that they were coming back. We knew that they had known that they were having these policy discussions, but I think, you know, we appoint our representatives. They are a distinct kind of municipality. They have their own governance structure and voting ways. But I do think that, you know, they held a retreat where they had this on the agenda, not Hinesburg, but the whole drop-off center. But it was certainly not something that was readily apparent to the public at large in Chittenden County that this has been considered, that of what's happening with drop-off centers. So, you know, I would think that we should send a letter and do all those other things as well.
I mean, I think we're in agreement. We should communicate. I guess the question is, do we do a direct letter, and maybe we could just take a you know, informal vote on it. I don't know what the cost is.
I'd have to check and see what
We
our,
just sent out
for a
text
mailing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
But
So, yeah.
we
It gets into every, you know, every taxpayer
Yeah.
who pays the bills will get information on where we stand. I think where Hinesburg is, and, you know, I think it'd be fine to share that here's what we're saying, making sure if in fact they're gonna have an open meeting.
Well, we're going to have an open meeting.
yeah,
I think
right.
it's like, it's not us and them.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, we.
collectively
Okay.
are
Yes.
going to
Yeah.
have
A
a
joint.
forum, a
Yeah.
joint meeting,
Right.
and,
Talk about
you know,
all
we
the
would like to
options.
host it and invite CSWD to come in and.
So it'd be
and-
nice to get that
Why don't
date.
we set the date?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was saying, when
Yeah.
maybe it makes sense for us to set this date
And
and
not-
then do this public,
Yeah.
reaching out
Right.
to the public
I
so
think
that
you're
they
right.
have.
So how
might
about
make
this?
sense.
I mean, is it possible, I know we have a draft already of some communication. You know, one or more of us working with Renee and Joy could, you know, draft that up. And then in the meantime, try to come up with this date, working with them. And then, you know, this could be the announcement of that, along with here's where we are and here's where we hope to go.
Yeah.
The other thing that they are still trying to work on is their site, and how to lay things out to make that work. Again, I think, there's been some changes of what the previous site, the offerings they had, and so they're trying to also fit those things into that site. But that's again where I reiterated, we weren't looking for anything extra. They have removed the reuse centers
Yes.
across the board on all of their sites, so that's going away. There's also the new requirement with, the food waste, the composting.
Right.
So there's a change there.
Well, they were collecting compost.
They were, but I think it's gonna be, it may look a
Probably
little
gets
different.
better.
Yeah.
Slightly improved
So,
process.
so there's some changes in their system that they're working through. That's why I also had Mitch come down to help them perhaps with traffic and how to, traffic flow. And so he had already worked on a little scenario to make that work. He did send them away with, some of his thoughts. Their person, Brian Wright, wasn't there, wasn't at the meeting, so they wanted to send that back to him. And then, continue to talk. Mitch was very willing to continue working with them if they have questions or need other ideas, to move that forward.
All right, how about?
And I would say that I have reached out to people who have written on Front Porch Forum and had conversations with them. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So I'll propose that, since Andrea's been involved in this, and so have I, and along with Renee and Joy, the four of us, come up with a draft, communication. Then if you would reach out to Sarah and say, let's pick a date. And then, let's pick a date. I don't think you need to poll us all that we can be there. I'm sure the majority of us will be try to get there. And pick a date, and then we'll be able to make that sort of an update of where we are and where, what are the next steps.
Okay. Good. Sounds good.
And maybe if they, if they're so inclined to reach out to CSWD, here's who they talk to. Mm-hmm. Our representatives and or their board.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
All right.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
Yeah.
So that,
In the drafting of the letter, will Doug or Lynn
Oh, we
be
should-
involved?
Yes.
Yeah, we should, yes,
Yes.
for sure.
I assume so, but you didn't say it,
Yeah.
but I
No,
assumed
you're
that was
right.
the case.
Yeah, that was a good,
One or
good
both.
point. Yep.
Yep,
all right.
thank you.
Anything else in the town administrator report?
Highway garage update, getting
Yeah.
close, so there's still some, some items that they're working on to finish. They're hoping to have final inspections happen at the end of next week. It just depends on making sure everything gets done before that. They want to wait until everything's all set before they have the inspections take place, and then, so the final CO could be issued.
Are we, am I assuming we'll have a cake or a party or something?
There will
You
be
know,
an open
something?
house at some
Yeah.
point. That hasn't been scheduled yet, but yes,
Okay.
we will do.
Yeah, I
we'll do a-
assume that was the case.
Yeah,
Good, good.
absolutely.
I look forward to it.
The real celebration is knocking the old one down.
Yeah.
Mike has
Yes.
been chomping at the bit.
And we keep asking Mike when he's planning to do that, because I think people want to have popcorn and have a viewing of that,
We
so.
could, that would
so
be fun, wouldn't it?
That will be quite a,
Get a Burnett truck up there and
right.
haul it away.
Village North sidewalk update, so as you know, we've been trying to find alternative ways. We've
That
been,
isn't built yet.
pretty soon Joy and I are gonna go out and build it, but, I would reached out to the CCRPC, Christine Ford, as Andrea had suggested, and, she had reached out, to the bike ped program just to see if there's any way that they could add to the funds. Final word came in today that no, so we would need to reapply or be able to come up with that difference where we're at. I did communicate with Jan. I sent Jan an email today, kind of outlined where we're at, where the grant award was, and back in 2013 of the 235,000, what the current construction estimates are, and then you have to factor in a 15% construction inspection, for construction inspection services of that total cost, and then a 10% contingency. And so what that total amount was, and then the expenditures to date are around $54,500 that we've spent on engineering services, so that you subtract from the 235,000 grant award. And so our difference is around 120,000 approximately. If we used asphalt versus the concrete that we have in plan, that'd be about a $50,000 savings. So then we're at a difference of a shortfall of $70,000 approximately. So I communicated that to her in an email, let her know that if she'd like to reach out and discuss it, we can. And if we're not able to come up with that shortfall, then that means waiting to the next grant cycle, which would put the construction off about 2 years.
I'd like to point out that it's not town dollars.
Right,
That we're
absolutely.
talking about. This
Right.
is federal dollars and private money that's going into it. So
Right, absolutely.
We have not spent $54,000 has been spent on it, but not town dollars.
Good clarification, yes, absolutely. So that's the update for that one, and we'll give you more as time goes on, which direction it moves forward or if it's delayed.
You know, at some point, and I know I've mentioned this before, I mean, it is NRG and Jolly's responsibility to get this built. I'm sort of curious on what the DRB, you know, what we have, and was there a deadline or anything like that? I asked before, and maybe should I just reach out to Alex specifically and ask him that question, is, so if it never gets built, what's the consequence? And is there a timing piece to it?
Right.
Because at some point, you know, we are doing all of their work.
Yes. And I would say that we will
it's
be
no
in the
different
same
than doing
position
Norris's sidewalk.
Exactly. I mean, we will be in this position with the Norris sidewalk as
Right.
well.
As
Right.
far as, so there was, you know, but they, remember Alex reapplied for additional funds, so that was just awarded today. We just got notice today that so that project is,
For Norris,
Going to
yeah.
continue.
But I mean,
But that
he's-
we aren't at construction on
Right.
that yet.
what's that? No.
Right. That, all I'm saying is that
Yes,
this will continue to happen when we do projects with federally funded.
yeah.
and this
Money.
isn't unique to Hinesburg. As
No.
I was talking to
No.
Christine, she goes, this happens all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the frustration of this process, because when you're doing those initial applications for the grant awards, there's no idea really what the costs are gonna be.
Right, no, I get
And
that,
so this-
but, you know, we could have gone in with this grant to say, if the town of Hinesburg's gonna do the work, we should be paid for the work. So, you know, I think we're sort of learning our lesson here, that we're, you know, the grant is great, we get the grant, it helps, you know, our developers, and that's a good thing, but, they have the responsibility to build the sidewalk, not the town.
Right.
And so they should be working hard. They should be finding bridges that are reasonable costs and coming up with alternatives to do it, and rather than the town.
So I predict it can take a lot of time to do all of this stuff.
Yeah, I
Right, and
appreciate
it's
that
not-
you're doing
and
it.
It is, I mean, it is our staff time, I think is
Right.
what
Yeah.
you're.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it's great that we're doing it. It's
But
important
it
that
could
we
be
get it
their
done.
engineers that they're paying
Right.
to
Right,
track
yeah.
Or
this.
at least be a partnership, and it
Yes.
doesn't feel like it is. If we have to
No.
reach out and say, hey, by the way, the cost is more, and, you know, in sort of holding hands
Yeah.
to get it done.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. The wastewater plant, so we did the RFQ for engineering services, and we went through that process. We have something in your packet that sort of outlines what that process was. Let me get to it. So we had the RFQ originally posted, and out of that, we had 2 firms that responded, and so we did those 2 interviews initially. After some, discussions with the state, it was, recommended that we might want to consider extending that another additional week to see if we could get more firms, because, best practice, at least 3 would be ideal to have to interview and to select from. So we did. We had an additional week, and out of that, we got 3 more firms. So we had a total of 5. We then did that interview process, and we had, prior to all 5 of those interviews, we had questions, a uniform set of questions that we asked each firm, and the order was they did a presentation first, and after that presentation, then we would go around and ask our uniform set of questions, which you should see in your packet. And then we had a sort of a rating system based on each question, had a weight scale. And so at the end of the interview process, we took all of those and we rated them and identified who was the top from there. The top two, we chose top two firms, and to check references on. Out of that process, we landed on one firm. So Aldrich and Elliott is who we selected. The engineering services, so.
I think the process also, I mean, it was a good process to interview all the candidates. They had somewhat different approaches. They were varying from small firms to large. This is an interesting process because the state kind of prescribes how we have to do it, so it's not necessarily a low bidder. We don't have any idea really of what the cost of these services will be. We were just asking for qualifications and who we thought was the best fit to work with the town, and the next step is to develop a scope of services of what we want. And I think that by interviewing all 5 firms, I think it gave us an opportunity to figure out what are those services, what are those questions that we would like the engineer or a combination of consultants to answer for us as we move ahead with, basically this is, we're talking about upgrades to the wastewater to meet our new permit and potential for expansion of the system. And not only the wastewater facility, but, we know there may be other issues with the entire infrastructure associated with it. So it's an opportunity to maybe look at all the infrastructure.
So I appreciate the work that went into this, and we ended up with Aldrich and Elliott, but it was good to confirm that, they're the right ones for us. So it was a good process to make sure, and I think it was a good educational process for everybody to sort of see what options and what approaches there might be out there for helping to solve our challenge with wastewater.
I think we all learned a lot through the process, and it was good information for all of us.
Good.
All right, so next I had the STP Walk 22, which is the project, the bike path on Mechanicsville Road, CVU, from back when it was done. The original bike path sidewalk.
From the post office, from the post office up Mechanicsville Road to CVU.
Okay.
Yeah. So during that time, that was back in 2012 when it started construction, maybe 2013. So there was different stormwater systems.
Okay.
Yes. So we'd received a stormwater invoice, and so then we had to kind of track and figure out where that was. So it's been sort of an investigative work trying to figure out what was going on. Turns out there's a system that was a storm treat system that's right along.
Is that the one that's right before the bridge?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
And so we met with an engineer from VHB today, because VHB is the original design for that project. And so now we know what needs to be done moving forward.
So there's certain ongoing maintenance. Is it part of the permit?
Yeah, it's part of the permit.
Okay.
Yep. And so we now know what the process is moving forward, so that we can get back on track with that. But there is what was supposed to have happened was, I think they were supposed to monitor 3 storm events or 5 storm events.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
To
5
see that
storm
it's working.
events.
Yeah.
And we haven't found evidence that happened. So we do need to now make that happen, which is going to involve either, an engineering firm or someone. So we're exploring some options because, original estimates are relatively high. So I just want to find how we can go about getting back.
So that's
Are we
waiting.
supposed to monitor at high flow or low flow? Does it say?
It's
5 storm
five
events.
storm events.
Storm,
Yeah, 5
Okay.
storms. So they
Yeah,
need
well,
to
we
actually.
wouldn't have any opportunity to monitor anything this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so they need to actually be out there during the
Right,
storm to
right.
take
Yes.
the, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
I mean, yeah.
that's
I mean,
typical
we're,
for big systems.
Lake Iroquois Association and Lewis Creek Association are, do those kinds of monitoring.
Yeah.
Do you have to be
And,
certified or?
well, it all goes, what we do is we grab samples
Yeah.
and everybody's trained and there's a QA, QC, and then it goes up to the La Rosa lab
Mm-hmm.
to be analyzed. So, well, we're trying to do high flow events this year.
Uh-huh. There's just
There
not
haven't been
a lot of
any.
activity in that. Right.
So I'll definitely
that's one of
check
the
it.
options
Yeah,
I
I'll
wanted to
check into
explore.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Good, all right.
yeah.
All right.
So we
Thank you.
didn't get in any trouble.
No,
Okay.
no, no. And
Just a
actually-
friendly reminder.
and yet this is another thing that he said, this is a very common thing.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're just trying to
Okay.
get back on track and
Okay.
doing what we're supposed to be doing. The street light on Mechanicsville Road, so there was a resident that had contacted, I think it's come before the board years ago too,
Yes.
about a street light that she feels that lights up her house more than she would like. And so I did have Frank go out and look at it, and then he met with her and discussed. And so his response to me is that he'd be okay. He did talk to another neighbor too, and the other neighbor didn't feel strongly about having the light on. So her preference was to have the light turned off. If it couldn't be turned off by the power company, then it would need to be shielded or something, is what she was hoping to have happen. She contacted the power company, and they said that direction needs to come from the town. So
To shield it.
to
No.
either shield it or to turn it off.
Oh.
Who owns
And
the
have
light?
Green Mountain Power.
Green Mountain Power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get billed for it.
Yes.
Yes.
Would we get billed to turn it off?
We should find out what it
Right.
costs to
Yeah.
disconnect,
What the savings would be for.
Yeah,
or if they charge us to take it off.
right.
I mean, I am very happy when the one goes off. I don't ever call and tell them to fix it when it's not working at my house. Because
Now it's
I
those
would
new
like to get rid of
LEDs,
all
right?
of them.
Yeah, but the price hasn't gone down.
Yeah.
Well, we have LED lights in them now, so
Right. So
it's
they're gonna-
costing
so
us
that's
less.
good, yeah.
It's costing us less for.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? I thought
Yes.
it was, it
I
is
think
costing?
yes,
I
think
thought it
we've
was a
noticed
set fee.
savings. No,
No?
I think that's why we went through that process,
Okay.
and that was what.
Oh,
recommended
interesting.
we
Where
had
are they
some savings.
metered?
Yeah.
I don't know, but
we can
yeah, I'm not
find
sure.
out.
There we
Yeah,
go.
maybe, yeah. So I think, I think we would need to know that to go forward with
Right.
that. But, and maybe you could tell us exactly which one it is so we can make sure we look
Yeah,
at it.
I don't have that. It's
Do you know which one?
I think, it's past Commerce Street.
yeah.
Yeah?
And going up Mechanicsville
Mechanics.
Road, kind of at the right by the cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah, north of the, or,
Yeah.
yeah, north
Heading
of the
north, yeah.
cemetery,
Yeah. Okay.
I think, right?
So we can see.
I just wish I could
yeah.
find her. Let me just.
I wonder how many are, well, we can look.
I think
see.
they only go up as far as that intersection. There's, on Mechanicsville Road, we don't have, streetlights.
Right.
Well, other
have to
ones
look.
that are around are because residents have
Put them in.
requested them.
Yeah.
It is something else to go for a walk in the village when the power goes out. It's incredible.
It's nice.
It's really nice.
All right. Let's see. Where's her email?
I mean, you could send it out at any time, but
Yeah.
it would be good to just take a look at it.
So Janice Osgood is the resident.
Yeah, it's the residents north of the cemetery. Yep.
On
the
that
same
side?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
the next house there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right,
Yeah.
we can take a look
Other
at
side of
that.
the creek.
Is there anything else for town administrator report?
Oh, this is Cheryl. I'm supposed to remind you, Aaron, that your hat is on her desk.
Yes, yes.
There you go.
I'm going, when I bring the warrants in, I'll grab it. Thank you.
That wasn't
All
on
right.
the
Thank you, Cheryl.
agenda.
Let's see, we've been having our department head meetings. And so those have been going very well. I think it's been a really good communication tool for all the department heads to be able to meet. And we've asked Alex to always, bring any proposed development to the table, and so that there's coordination with highway, utilities.
So you sort of have a standard agenda for the meeting?
Yeah, we have a standard agenda, but we also have additional things that happen each time, but some things that we're doing each time.
Right,
Yep.
like that. would
Like
be
that,
one. Yeah.
absolutely.
That's good, that's perfect.
We've been doing a monthly, we have a set schedule time, so
Good.
everybody can just marks it on their calendar, and this last one, I think was representative. That's really, I think it's been a good thing, because there was a lot of communication, there was a lot of sharing. People actually prepared their notes ahead of time of what to share, what was going on, and
Good job.
I think we
Yeah.
felt like success. That was a good thing.
So maybe the select board might get an invite to go to one, just to tag on?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So you can just let us know when they are.
Yeah. I've got the set schedule, and I don't have my calendar here.
Maybe of September? Hold on.
Well, it's the set Wednesday
Yeah.
on, is it the
Pardon
second
me, that means
Wednesday?
it's the 12th.
Is it the second Wednesday?
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm.
10 o'clock. Yeah,
So August 12th,
Right here.
10 a.m.
September
And it
What's
goes about an hour?
September 12th.
Did I say August? I want to go backwards, I really do.
Well, you like the meeting. It was a
You
good-
know,
want to go all the way back to Switzerland, huh?
No, I want to go back to June and try this again.
yes, 'cause
But better.
yes.
Okay.
So, one thing we're talking about, in addition to the regular things, are performance evaluations. So we have templates out from other towns and from VLCT, and so I've been trying, we've been asking for feedback from the department heads on what and we also had the old one, and what people liked about it, what people didn't like, and then, looking at the other ones. And so acknowledging we're not going to be able to meet everyone's needs, but just to try to get a good sense of what has been valuable, and try to make sure we include that in that. So, and that we're going to have more of a presence in all of the departments. And so we've been starting to take walks, and, so the other day we took a journey down, and we headed to the wastewater department, and, met with Eric there, and then tried the fire department because all the bays were open, but they'd just gone out on a call. And then headed to the police department, but I think they were on the same call. So, but we've been doing that more often. Yeah, so there we go. So just so that we're able to see everybody, and they're seeing us, and we're having a better understanding of what's going on, what everybody's doing in their departments. So, we'd like to do ride-alongs with the police. We'd like to do, with the utilities department when they're doing some of their work, and just have a really good understanding, and know that we're not just closed in an office. And
That's great.
So,
yeah.
So I think that's been good. And
That's really good to hear. Renee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think it's been very successful. I said the Village South sidewalk, they received their approval for the additional funds that they requested. And other thing I want to talk about is budget season. Hard to believe, but
Finally, it's back.
here we are again. So I want you to start thinking about it. I know it's August, but it's the time to really start thinking about, first of all, what went well last year. What could we do better? What things do you want to change? How do we want that process to look this year? And we're actively working behind the scenes to get estimates on some of our bigger
Okay,
capital
good.
items. So calling around to companies that can look at our slate roof and actually do the replacing that needs to happen, because that's a huge something we want to prioritize, because we don't certainly want to have water coming in or any damage done. And if we can replace it now, it's just simply replacing slate rather than having a bigger cost. Also, we have that first floor emergency exit door that I'm going to have some people come out and look at and see if we can get some cost estimates on that. Third floor, despite our attempts at trying to get a temporary one of the portable ladders as an exit, based on the video that was sent to me while I was in treatment of Alex dangling from a ladder, that was not successful. So we've sent that back, and we're going to have to do a fixed ladder of some sort or some other type of thing, because of the roof, the way the roof is. It just doesn't lend itself to one of those portable ladders, apparently. So those are some of the items that we're
So like you're talking about a fixed ladder out like the window, one of the front windows?
Yeah, we're actually fixed to the building.
Yeah.
And so there's different ways of, maybe it's something that goes down into the main hall and out that way, or maybe, and there just needs to be alternative exits for the third floor. So we need to come up with some plan. We had the assistant fire marshal here, and that was where we got the recommendation of the portable ladder, but he didn't see it in action. And so that changed our plan. And so we may have one of
either the state fire marshal or the assistant fire marshal come back and really look at the building. And has there ever been discussion of sprinklering the building?
I mean, I don't know if that was a discussion at the time when this town hall was.
I'm not sure you had the water at
didn't.
that point.
Okay.
So now you have the tank on the top of the hill.
Right.
And there is some capacity there. It'd be interesting to look, because you'd never be able to replace this building.
Right.
And maybe there's grants and stuff for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe Al might help us with that.
Right. So that's
his opinion.
We can certainly look at that.
And would we even consider?
If we were building it new, we would have to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. And that's another thing at the department head meetings, really talking about everyone's buildings and making sure that we're really taking care of it. We're focusing on this building, trying to do things, but we want to make sure all of our taxpayers have invested in the police station, now the highway garage, and our utilities, and the water treatment plant. So everybody's making sure that any maintenance items are communicated to Eric or whatever, and we're identifying what needs to be done and taking care of our buildings.
Right.
So that is.
Would we ever consider removing a window and putting in a door instead, and doing a ladder, like a fixed ladder sort of thing down the side of the building?
Oh, you mean like a fire escape type?
There used to be.
Yeah. I'm thinking like the smaller windows on the end. Maybe, or I don't know.
There used to be a fire escape.
There used to be a
door?
outside staircase.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And why did we remove that? Or was there?
When the front porch.
There wasn't a front porch.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember exactly where it went up, but
okay.
I mean, I'm not even sure, was there interior stairs then? Or was it?
That was the only way up?
No, that was the only way up.
Yeah, that was the only way up. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Roger Cohn had his office
So
up there.
let me rephrase that. Could we put the stairs back?
Wow.
Well, it would have to
no
be
idea.
I mean,
Right.
I have no
yeah.
idea if it's practical or not,
Right.
but have we ever talked about it?
Yeah.
They were never fun to go up and down. let me put it
It's
that way.
hard too
But again,
now.
you're just trying to get out in the fire.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah.
You know.
But unfortunately, it's hard to do something really simple. When you go to actually do it, it has to meet
Right.
all of the requirements, and it becomes very difficult
Right.
and costly.
But if
So
it's
we've
just a
looked at
fire
that.
escape, I mean, a fire exit,
Has to be
the ladder.
covered.
Right, but I mean, this ladder thing,
Yeah,
if the
that would
ladder
be-
thing
yeah.
meets the
Right.
requirements.
That sounds
then-
like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
that's all.
Anything, that's it. All right.
Nothing much.
Select board forum.
So I have major constraints on my time, so I have chosen to leave the water allocation committee.
Okay.
Aaron expressed some interest in doing it back when we first created it, so I asked him to take my spot. He agreed. Andrea and who else? And Alex. I contacted them and ran it by them. They thought it was perfectly okay, so that's the route we're gonna go.
Yeah, the
I guess.
idea is that you had the time, I didn't, and now that's
Right, now
swapped.
it's
So.
switched.
Well, it's good that, we're able to do that, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Andrea forwarded me an email, although I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
of-
apparently Alex hasn't put you on the email list.
Yeah, and so I
So
appreciate
we
that.
have some
So,
homework
Told me he was going
assignments.
to, but-
Yeah,
yeah. So 2 weeks, I guess we have
yeah.
something like that. So.
Oh, thanks for doing that. All right.
So if everybody's agreeable, that's what we'll do.
And then you guys can do a little update to the
Yeah.
board
Yeah.
at different meetings, and that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. Has anybody else got anything?
Well, I have one more.
Oh,
Obviously, the tragic events at the Bissonnette Fields.
Yeah.
What happened
Some
there?
bozo went out there with a car, to put it simply.
When did it happen? Do you know?
Well, they think between
think-
Thursday afternoon and Friday.
Yeah.
So they
Apparently,
think.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it was dry, so really the damage is relatively minimal.
Oh, wow.
But still, not okay.
not cool.
Everybody, a lot of people are very upset by it.
Yeah.
There's a news story on it tonight, Channel 5
Good,
puts
okay.
out. So there is getting a little bit of coverage, which is good. So maybe that'll scare
Yeah.
people from
Yeah.
doing it again.
Seems like this happened at South Burlington a couple years ago
Yeah,
as well.
it
or
happened.
something.
It's
it
happened
happens,
to CVU
yeah.
recently as
Yeah.
well.
Did,
And it's
okay.
just
Yeah.
stupidity. On the bright side, the contractor is just about done the regular groundwork, and multi-purpose number 2 will be ready for seed tomorrow. And the Little League field, all the basic prep work is done, and he'll start shaping that, and it might be ready for seed in a couple weeks.
Wow, great.
Rain,
So-
get rain.
The timing is actually perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just about perfect. The
Absolutely.
seed was actually delivered today, so
Excellent.
right on schedule.
Nice.
So budget season's coming up,
Oh,
so,
yeah.
you know, I'm not sure. I assume the rec committee's looking at that, and I forget, last year there was money in the budget, some money in there for the
For-
fields.
Yeah.
So I assume that if there's something else that needs to be, it'll be put in the budget. Yeah,
Right. Yep.
good. Electric fence or, you know, cameras.
Sniper in the trees.
Yeah. Ditches around it. Anybody else with select board forum? I had a couple items. One, I put a doodle poll out there for the LCI Fish On or something. Is that what they call it? Yeah. I noticed my email looked like we were all going fishing. So I think we
Yeah, I
got
signed up right away.
we got and 3 of us, I think, so far. So 4, did you were in there too? So you know, I think it's limited to 4 or 5 people. So I think I'll just go ahead and do that, and then you know, maybe we'll come back and say it was the best thing going, and or if we think others in the town, like, you know, Mike or his team, or
They're going out next week. We're all going out next week.
oh, you are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not with Lake Champlain International, but with Melisira, which is the UVM research boat.
Is that the email I saw about that, or that was something else?
So you sent out an
Yeah.
email.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll go ahead and say let's do it and see what it's like. So,
So what day, because they were, or are you gonna send us an
I'll send
email?
it out. Yeah, I have to look at
And
it.
it's at 6 o'clock in the morning,
6
right?
in the morning. Yeah.
And we'll be done by 8?
Yeah.
Is that it?
An hour and a half, I thought they
Okay.
said. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I can make that work.
Yeah.
okay.
On the
Okay.
days I marked.
And then the another thought is just a thought I'll kind of put out there. We don't have to. Is that it might be nice on these sidewalks we have, maybe in 3 or 4 places. It'd be nice to have a trash can. You know, so I don't know if it's ever been discussed, or we might be able to get maybe a couple of the local businesses to put one outside. But it might help the doggy doo-doo bags get put away. And, you know, when you're walking around, you pick up some trash, it'd be nice to not have to carry it a mile and a half home, but to put it somewhere. I know it comes with a lot of, you know, difficulty, but it's not uncommon to see in some places, and I don't know. You're smiling.
I think it's
Just a thought.
I think it's a great idea when I suggested it when I was on the Conservation Commission, because that, to me, is a logical place, you know, to have doggy bags and a trash can, and everybody came up with all these reasons why that was a terrible idea. People are gonna dump the trash can, they're gonna spill trash all over the place, or else they'll come and put all their trash in it and fill it up, and who's gonna empty it? The town is definitely not gonna empty it. So, if you can get around those obstacles, I'm all for it.
I don't know if anybody's ever tried to talk about it before or had the idea.
I think if you're in the, you do have to be careful because people. I think what you were talking about was Japrags.
I agree.
Yeah.
And absolutely, they would go dump
Yeah.
anything
Right.
and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe in the village in a few
Yeah, maybe
very
3
specific
spots, yeah.
locations, maybe it'll work. If they're like an enclosed, so you can only put small things
Right.
in it.
Right.
Because any
So I've been
opportunity to
looking,
dump
I'll-
free
I'll try,
trash.
maybe I'll put one at the end of my driveway and
Well, I
see
mean,
how much
I've
trash
been-
gets in.
I've been sort of looking at it for like the last month and a half, and as I go around different towns, I see, you know, what they have. And, you know, it would be nice. It is convenient, and if you, it might help keep the town a little bit, particularly the sidewalks, cleaner, so.
Yeah, it would Definitely upscale our image.
Well, yeah.
Oh, and so then the last thing, I'm just kind of putting that out there. If anybody has any more thoughts on it, or Renee, if you have any thoughts, we could talk about it. The other thing is I did go to the water department to get to the demo. I hadn't been in the building at all
neither.
before,
Yeah, I went
so
too.
it was very good. It was very
Loud, isn't it?
yeah, and it's sort of what I expected. I've worked in business
Right.
buildings like that with pumps, so it was fun to get a good tour, and they have a good operation. And we did talk about, speaking about the budget, had a discussion about some of their pumps are duplex, so they have 2 pumps, but there was one place that they had only 1 pump, one of the big pumps, and if it was to go down, the water would go down until they got a replacement. So, it might be, because I asked that specific question, do you have all the spare parts you need to keep this thing running? And so as we looked at it, it said, well, there's duplex pumps, so if one goes, you always got the other one, and they cycle back and forth, which is typical what you do for operations that you can't have downtime, like a wastewater treatment plant or a water plant. But there was one large pump there that was the only one. And, at some point, it's going to need maintenance. At some point, it's going to go down. And, is it a 4-hour replacement? He said the operation, the people who do the microfiltration, he said they happen to have one there, but they're not holding it for us necessarily. So anyway, so that would be a question for them. Do they have
a capital budget thing, or is it just a budget thing?
It might be, yeah. It would be a budget thing. It would be the enterprise. That's right. But it might be,
We need a capital fund for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about the budget, and you're saying, all the buildings, it'd be true for really everything. Do we what do the departments have? What do they need? What make? And then they can come and might not be able to do it all, but could say, okay, maybe not this year, but next year, let's get it in there. So, because we, having the water reliable, we know is really important. I'd hate to be down for 2 days because we can't get a pump. And that's it for me, I think. But it was a great tour.
Good. Glad you guys went.
Yeah, I got there at the very end. They were cleaning up, and I was like, oh,
Ah.
I never actually had been in there, so
wow.
it was
All
good to see.
Good.
Next item is,
It was cool in there too. It was a really hot day.
yeah, it was. Review the minutes from the 2nd of August, and they're in our packet.
I'll make a motion to approve them as amended, if needed.
Second it.
Any amendments? What?
I'm expecting
you mean
something
then we had to
early.
read it?
No, it
I
looked
had,
perfect to me.
2 items I just wanted to bring up. One was, and I had asked, according to the minutes, asked Eric to do a couple of sort of, I'll say, actions. But it might be nice, I'm suggesting that it might be nice in our minutes if there are sort of actions that we agree this needs to get done, that it's clear in the minutes, so that as we look at the minutes, so here it said, hey, Phil asked Eric, write a memo with a list of grandfathered water allocations. And then also the memo concerning the issue with Brett had been charged for something and he was going to get a refund. So I'm assuming he wrote a memo to Missy and said, hey, give a refund for this reason, rather than just, not having some
How do
documentation.
you envision that looking? Are you thinking a bullet point? Are you thinking a
Maybe.
call out? Are you thinking just
Maybe
an underline?
What we did in the previous organization was we actually called it an action item, and it was in bold.
And labeled it as such?
Yeah,
Yep.
and, action item dash, and then it was
So like at
described.
the end of the minutes before you adjourn, put, these are the action items from
Or would you
that.
place them
Yeah.
within the context of the minutes?
Either
At
one.
the end of
They
each
could
agenda
be
item.
in the
Yeah.
context as well, and then when we go over the minutes, we can check where they're
Right,
actually done.
Right. And not that we, gonna go back 6 months, but at least we as a board, we're agreeing, hey, we would like this to get done, whether it could be,
find
it
it.
could be me that has to do it, right? Or anybody.
And then I think it's a help when it comes up, like today, when we talked about revising the documentation on,
The Appendix E.
yes, that you could say, or Aaron almost did say, this is an action item, so that we verbalize it, and then
Yeah.
Val can write it as such.
Do you want to try that?
Yep.
Yeah, so if you just do the action item, because what I'm already doing is I'm going through and underlining any motions we make, so it's easy to find motions for that same reason. So if you just label it as an action item, then I can just bold it or something. I'll figure something out so it stands out, but calling it out, I'll grab it from there.
Okay.
And we'll see how it goes. See if Phil likes it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
makes sense.
It makes me just hold back in that sometimes we say a lot of things for Renee, and you know, and sometimes we say, oh, you know, we should do this, we should do that, but Renee's got her priorities she's gonna set. So just because we say this is a good thing to do, may not necessarily get done in the next 4 weeks. So I think we just have to be clear about really what sort of things we do expect, and get agreement that, you know, and Renee nodding to us, yes, that makes sense, versus
usually
us
writing
just
as
coming
she's
up with
nodding.
ideas,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So along that line, it's a good idea to say who's doing the action item, because it's not always Renee, and
Right.
maybe if it's Renee, we don't even have to say action item, because
Right.
we know she's gonna do it.
And then the other thing, I just had one slight item on page 2, discussion under allocation of water, wastewater. The third sentence near the end, have it done on a payment schedule, and this is setting a precedent. I think we just take out TO, and to this is setting, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any other items? Okay, so we have the motion. All those in favor of the minutes as amended, and only that one slight amendment, say aye.
Were you the second, Phil, or did I miss who it was?
Myself and then Marilee.
Merrily, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Right?
Yep.
Yep. Myself and then Marilee.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
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 So that motion passed. Consider approving the warrants.
I'll make the motion to consider approving warrants to include payroll. Phil, can I see that?
Yep.
That one, please.
Did you want to look at it
No,
first?
you can move
Okay.
forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Marilee?
I said aye, yes. It's
Okay,
not very
so
loud.
that motion passed. So the next item is to consider a motion to go into executive session. And we have two potential items to discuss. One is concerning the legal issues surrounding the, how do we describe it? The
Gilman Road.
Gilman Road cleanup. So I think the select board, Joy and Renee would be included in that. And then the second item is just to have a discussion on personnel. The same folks would come for that. So 2 items. We would stop the broadcast, Ken, and if there were, as I said before, if there were any actions taken coming out of that, I don't think there will be, but if there were, we would come out of executive session and make those motions, and they would be reflected in our minutes. So the broadcast would end once we, if we make a motion to go into executive session. So I think we
I'll
need
make a motion to go into executive session under provisions of 1 VSA, section 313A, 1A, 2, and A3.
I'll second that motion. So, can we put a time limit on it?
Yeah, I don't think it will take very long. I think
Until,
Right.
on the executive session,
yeah.
yeah.
Can you hand me that, please?
I would think it'd certainly be within 30 minutes, if not sooner.
Say we'll be done by 10.
Yeah. Okay.
if not sooner.
So we have the one motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to go into
Aye.
executives,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
Executive session to include Renee and Joy. Premature disclosure would jeopardize
Our legal position.
our legal position on these issues.
And
On
then-
issues of personnel and legal matter involving the court on
Yeah.
Gilman Road.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that motion passed, so we're gonna move into executive session. Thank you, Ken.